Hello everyone. Legendary artifacts, sharp swords, magnificent rings and many other things were created by blacksmiths in the medieval era. Surely, medieval blacksmiths must have been respected and loved by everyone. You might be mistaken. In reality, blacksmiths in the Middle Ages lived harsh and miserable lives. They had to endure many wounds and burns while working, and instead of being praised, they were punished for not doing exactly what was assigned to them. Today we will explore the history of medieval blacksmiths. Immerse yourself in the scene and feel as if you are the main character in the story. Before drifting into dreams, maybe take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It would be fascinating to see people joining us from all around the world. Now dim the lights, enjoy the quiet space. Listen to the story alongside the gentle crackling of the firewood. Let's embark on tonight's journey together. You wake with a start, not to the crowing of roosters or the tolling of church bells, but to something suffocatingly silent. Your anvil has been sealed with red wax, stamped with the ring of the landlord's steward. The anvil, the heart of the forge, has suddenly become something you may not touch until you've paid the full tax due. A thin sheet of paper is affixed alongside. The slanted script reading: before sunset, 7 plough blades and 3 spearheads for the watch patrol. Late flogging. Past the deadline. Forge closed. No wasted words. Only the dry wax seal, cold as a gaze that has already passed judgment. You hold the paper, feeling the sweat on your palms stick through the sky has yet to fully brighten. The first light outside the eaves is only a dull smear. In the forge, last night's charcoal still clings to a faint ember. Carefully you break the wax seal, set the anvil back into its place on the thick block of wood, hardened by countless hammer strikes. The sound of metal touching metal resonates in that familiar low tone, and you know the workday or the act of self-rescue has begun. You light the fire with the dry pieces of charcoal, dropping in a handful of braided straw. The bellows creak, each pull and push tightening your chest slightly. That pain has long been an old companion, clinging to you since winters past. The charcoal shifts from black to deep red, then to a golden orange, like a moon hidden beneath ashes. In that light, everything falls back into order. Hand hammers, sledgehammers, tongs, C-clamps, steel billets, scraps of iron stored in the wooden chest, a moss-tinted whetstone, and the long clamp that is always hotter than you expect. You review the village orders promised since the last market day: a kitchen knife for the weaver's household, 12 barrel nails, and 2 sets of unfinished horseshoes, all of it pushed aside, because the red wax seal has already spoken for you. The landlord's work comes first. You place the billet into the forge, waiting for its colour to shift from darkness to a soft, yielding red. You've learned to read colour the way a farmer reads clouds to predict rain. When the billet is ripe, you lift it out and set it on the anvil. Every hammer blow is both labour and a tally of time. Before mid-morning, your hands are blistered in the same old grooves. Tiny iron scales, glinting like fish, scatter each time the billet's edge is pressed. They leave black specks on your sleeves, on your neck, and sometimes when you forget to turn your head, dart into the corners of your eyes, burning like grains of hot sand. You've grown accustomed to blinking, angling your head, breathing through your teeth so the dust and smoke drift elsewhere. But familiarity does not make it hurt less. It only teaches you how to endure. 7 plough blades, you murmur like a spell. Plough blades aren't difficult, but they cannot be careless work. They till the landlord's fields. The furrows must be deep and even. If one breaks in the middle of the season, the first to be punished is you, not the soil. You forge the long body of the blade, giving it thickness along the spine, thinness along the edge, a curve at the tip, and now and then quenching it to keep the voice. Steam rising, heavy with the smell of heated iron, ash, and the skin of your hands. That hiss is a reminder that metal has a temperament. It expands, it sulks, it cracks if you rush. You hold it with tongs, striking evenly, striking at an angle so the grain of the iron aligns like the grain of wood. When it needs welding, you sprinkle a bit of fine ground sand over the joint and hammer repeatedly until the seam vanishes. Each hammer blow summons a fresh ache in your shoulder. You recall how, the day before, you overworked the bellows trying to burn a batch of damp charcoal, the tendon in your shoulder pulled taut like a rope held over a flame. It's the kind of pain that will bloom into numbness by afternoon. You know this because the forge teaches patience through your own body. Scald burns hardening into callus. Cuts from the raw edge of steel leaving pale streaks. Nails split from slipping clamps. And once, a big toe swollen for weeks when you carelessly leaned a billet against the anvil only for it to fall. Every mark on your body is a small map pointing to the mistake of a day gone by. Between two plough blades, you take the chance to shake the ash from the forge, lay in a fresh layer of charcoal, pack it down, and work the bellows hard so the fire bites deep. Sweat runs down and soaks the collar of your wool shirt, and you can't help but feel both amused and weary. Every winter you dread the cold, yet here at the forge you feel as hot as if standing beside the monastery cook's hearth. You pour a little water from the clay jug, tilt your head back to drink, feeling the grit of metal dust sliding down your throat. You cough, a dry, familiar cough that greets you every morning, like the smoke's own hello. One day that cough will become another old companion, you know it. But not today. There are still 4 plough blades left. Near midday, the elephant keeper's son drops by. He doesn't look directly at the forge. Children often fear the fire. But his eyes go to the basket of horseshoes. "Master says," he begins, "this afternoon bring the horse for shoeing." The old grey slipped on the slope. Shoe came loose. You nod, answering curtly. "Afternoon?" You want to add that you're being driven hard by the red wax seal, that the shoeing will have to wait, that if he comes too late you'll be working in the dark and your eyes will ache. But the words leave your mouth only as a nod. Small matters like this you always swallow, partly because the customer belongs to the manor, partly because the connection with them is something that could be taken away the day the steward changes his mind. You eat lunch with a piece of hard bread, dipped in salt and a strip of pork fat turned yellow. Leaning back against the earthen wall, you half close your eyes, listening to the bellows breathe slower while the fire holds. At times like now you think about how the forge never truly belongs to you. The anvil is yours. The hammers are yours. But the right to forge or not to forge. To forge for whom first to set the price. Those belong to the people whose names are in the ledger and whose seals carry weight. That is why your debt book is thick. Twice a year, they collect the forge tax. In money if you've sold well. In products if the market season is poor. Meat, salt, charcoal. All rise in price just when you need to buy the most. The blacksmith shop under the landlord's rule. That saying is the truth you carry on your back each morning. The seal this morning was simply that truth speaking out loud. You get up, brush off your tunic and return to the 4th plough blade. By now the sun has poured onto the earthen floor outside the eaves, a thin golden streak crawling across the ground, touching your brow each time you bend. Among the smells of charcoal and metal, you catch a hint of vinegar. The neighbour woman just stopped by asking you to fix her kitchen knife, and you've set aside the vinegar jar so that when you temper the blade you can dip it in to feed it. Tricks like these you picked up from the old smith before you, washing your hands with vinegar after a light burn, rubbing grease on tong handles to keep them from slipping, keeping a lump of alum in the chest so your hands stay dry. That smith left for the neighbouring village with his daughter, leaving you the forge with an anvil chipped at the corner and a small debt to the church. You paid the church with roofing nails. The church likes good nails. You shape the plough tip with hammer strikes as steady as footsteps along the village road. From time to time you pause, lifting the tip to eye level to check the curve. If it bulges slightly, you strike the spine. If the edge is a bit thick, you grind it on the stone so it will bite into the soil. What you fear most is not an ugly plough tip, but one that breaks in the middle of the field. Because when that happens, people won't say, "The soil is full of stones." They'll say, "The blacksmith is clumsy." On you, words like that cut deeper than any burn. Midway through the day, the steward passes by, followed by 2 men from the manor. He doesn't step into the forge, only stands beneath the eaves, glancing in. "How far along?" he asks, as if it's part of a ritual. "4, you answer. He gives the smallest of nods, the kind that is neither praise nor reproach, then looks at the fossil-like anvil, the forge, the basket of charcoal. "Charcoal's scarce this season," he remarks, as if sighing on your behalf. You say nothing. You know he understands charcoal is expensive. You also know he won't reduce the forge tax. When he leaves, the studded boots of the men behind him leave a trail of nail marks in the dirt. A trail that reminds you that if you're late, those marks could lead you to the pillory in the market square. You move on to the spearheads. Spearheads aren't complicated, but they need hardness at the tip and toughness along the shaft. You forge a long piece, tapering it toward the point, cut a slit to form the socket for the shaft, roll it and weld it shut. Spearheads require careful tempering. Heat until the colour of aged straw, quench quickly, pull it out and wipe it with grease to prevent rust. You once had a spearhead crack in the voice, a dry snap like the shell of a walnut, just because you quenched it too deep. That time the soldier gave a derisive chuckle and said, "Forge it again, I've still got time for another drink." You forged it again, worked yourself to exhaustion, but learned that the voice of steel is something you must hear not only with your ears and eyes, but with the faint vibration in your palms. As the afternoon deepens, the forge grows fiercely hot. You loosen your belt, open your shirt. Sweat drips onto the edge of the anvil with a soft hiss. You wipe your brow, the salt from your sweat stinging your eyes and blurring your vision for a heartbeat. When you blink, your hammer misses the billet's mouth, striking the anvil's edge. The jolt reverberates back up to your wrist. A sharp needle-like pain runs to your elbow. You set the hammer down, rotate your wrist, and breathe steadily. It's the kind of pain that reminds you that being off by half a finger's width can cost you a week of stiffness. You take a strip of cloth and wrap it around the hammer handle to make it thicker, sparing your hand the direct shock. That strip keeps you warm in winter, soaks up sweat in summer. Simple, cheap, and far more effective than many a piece of advice. As the sunlight outside the eaves begins to stretch long, the elephant keeper's old grey is led in. The animal breathes heavily, its left forelegs slightly lifted, the hoof chipped to reveal the tender pink flesh beneath. You tie it to a post, speaking softly to calm it. Shoeing a horse is something you both like and fear. You like the steady rhythm of the work, but fear that a sudden jerk of the leg could scratch your face or crush a finger. You work quickly, cleaning the hoof, trimming it flat, testing the new shoe, driving the nails along the curve, bending their ends to hug tight. The smell of horse mingles with the smell of hot iron, a strange composite scent you've long lived with. The horse snorts and you pat it lightly. Good. Once done, you take a few coins. Those coins will go straight toward tomorrow afternoon's bag of charcoal. Money in the forge always runs away, like well water seeping through stone. Before the sky darkens completely, you lay on the table 7 straight, even plough blades, and 3 spearheads gleaming with oil. You look at them as if counting the breaths of a day. The steward returns, this time with a man carrying a wooden chest. He inspects each piece, neither praising nor criticising. He nods, placing 3 large coins on the cracked wooden table. "The forge tax still owes from the last term," he says, his voice as thin as the paper from this morning. "I'll deduct it." 3 coins become 2, then 1.5. He deducts again for the charcoal the manor lent you during the rainy season. In the end, what you hold is just enough to buy a cart of firewood and a little flour. He pulls out a fresh strip of wax, stamps it and sets it beside the anvil. This time it's a slip marked paid. The same piece of red wax, yet you feel you can breathe easier. It is the feeling of having returned to you something that was always yours, the right to let your hammer touch the metal. You clean the forge, rake out the ash, bank the charcoal, rinse your hands in the murky bucket you jokingly call medicine water. Its colour always reflects the day. On heavy forging days it's black. On grinding days it's grey. On shoeing days it froths with grease. You look at your hands, tiny cracks running like river maps. And think of the punishments if you had been late today. At last week's market, a blacksmith from the next village was tied to the pillory in the square for half a day because he broke the manor servant's sword. Perhaps the blade was already fatigued. Perhaps the servant swung carelessly. But that didn't matter. Here, blame always finds the easiest face to point at, the craftsman. You look at the anvil and wonder, if one day your hands shake so much that your hammer no longer falls true, who will break the seal for you? You extinguish the main fire, leaving a strip of glowing embers buried in the ash. You call it the heart of the forge, so tomorrow morning you won't have to start from scratch. You cover the tool shelf with a leather sheet, hang the tongs, set the hammers in order. These small rituals carry you through the days. Beyond the threshold, the wind brings the smell of fresh straw and the sound of children chasing one another. Overhead, the church bells count the hour. Your throat is dry, your back sore, your eyes stinging. Yet within that fatigue there is a single, durable thread. You have kept the forge open for another day. In these times, survival is sometimes just another name for honour. Night falls. You light a candle, pull up a chair, rest your bare feet on the cool stone, and take a needle to pick out the tiny, iron scales lodged under your skin, the blacksmith's shooting stars. You rub a little pork fat over the blisters, wrap them in cloth, then take up the kitchen knife the weaver's wife asked you to mend. The blade is worn, the handle loose. You pull the old nails, drive in new ones, and sharpen the blade on the stone. The grindstone sound is long, steady, like someone murmuring a prayer in a voice too soft to catch. You are in no hurry. No one is pressing you for this knife. No red wax seal waits nearby. This slow work, strangely enough, is the part you find peaceful. A small tool, in a humble kitchen, helping someone slice an onion, cut a piece of bread. Amid all the things made for the powerful, you still find ways to slip in a little of what's made for ordinary people. The candle burns low. You snuff it out and listen to the forge without its fire. The wood contracting. The metal cooling with faint breaths. The sound of a mouse's feet in the corner of the chest. Your body cools with it. The ache in your shoulder eases. The sting in your wrist fades. The cough softens. Tomorrow will be like today. And the day after may be harder, for charcoal is growing scarce. You will have to choose who to forge for first, who to owe later, whose blade edge to leave a little dull, to whom to pay an extra nod. Among all these choices, one thing does not change. If you err, punishment will find you. Whip fine, forge closed, anvil seized. Those words stand waiting at the end of the lane like familiar shadows. And yet knowing this, you still rest your hand on the now cool anvil, as if touching a gentle creature, and say quietly in your heart, "Tomorrow I will forge again." Outside you hear the voices of late passers-by talking, about next week's tax collection, about someone's plough blade breaking in a stony field, about the market where the charcoal traders force prices down. Those words pass through your ears like wind, but you keep the last one. The smith at the end of the lane got a wax seal today. You smile faintly, a smile both bitter and light, because you know that Smith is you, and that seal was how the morning greeted you. The surprise at dawn, it turns out, was only a reminder that a blacksmith's life has never truly been his own. It belongs to the fire, the hammer, the orders written on thin paper, the backs that plough the fields, the horses that slip, and every hand you place on hot metal to turn it into something useful. You are no hero, and you don't need to be a martyr. You are simply the one who rises early, sleeps late, bearing on your back the sound of the bellows and the marks of burns, so the village's day can run smoothly. You let yourself sink into the bamboo cot, pull the cloth up to your stomach. In the smell of ash clinging to your clothes, you think of another day to come. Perhaps with a different paper, a different seal, a different request. But just before you sleep, you allow yourself one small, simple thought. Tomorrow, when the sky first brightens, you will grind smooth the chipped edge of the anvil, slip an extra piece of wood beneath its foot so the hammer falls softer, and mend the worn strap of your leather apron. That is the one thing you truly own, how you care for your tools. The rest, you leave for the red wax to say its piece, and for the hammer's voice to say yours. You close your eyes. The forge is as quiet as steady breathing. If someone were to ask, how hard is the blacksmith's life these days? You could answer without thinking. As hard as a long day, as a red wax seal in the morning, as the ache in your shoulder that comes at the rooster's crow and leaves at the church bells, but also as enduring as ash holding embers through the night, so that in the morning, when you work the bellows, the fire leaps back to life. And you know that tomorrow, you will hear that sound again, the voice of metal changing. From hard to soft, from useless to useful, the one sound in the day that belongs entirely to you. The next morning, you haven't yet stirred the heart of the forge, when the wooden door knocks, thud, thud, not a familiar customer. Two men in the manor's heavy coats, hoods drawn to cover half their faces, stand there, accompanied by a chest of documents. They hand you a form, one of them tracing a finger to a line of text. Chapel gate hinges, complete within 3 days, no delay. You haven't finished reading when the one holding the pen sharpens his voice. Church property is also the Lord's property. You know what to do, don't you? They make no direct threats, but the smell of damp leather and the clink of a sword against a belt say enough in place of the whip. You nod. The door closes, leaving a patch of cold shadow spilling into a forge not yet lit. You stand still for a moment, listening to the silence like a saw left idle. In it, you hear the breath of bellows not yet worked, the stir of ash, the faint contraction of metal in the forge's corner. Today's work shifts direction. Nails, kitchen knives, horseshoes are pushed to the back. Chapel gate hinges move to the front. Hinges must bear weight, yet move smoothly, without sticking, without play. Their two leaves lying flush like an altar table's surface. You take a billet, measure roughly with an old hemp cord, mark points with a punch, already picturing in your mind where to bore the holes, where to fold, where to temper. This is the part of the work no one sees. Forging begins by sitting and looking at a cold bar of iron, imagining it changing colour. You stir up last night's charcoal, the heart of the forge, flaring like someone dozing suddenly called by name. The bellows quicken their breath. Your hands follow the rhythm, the old wound in your shoulder heating in its long, familiar line. You bend, set the billet in, and wait for the deep red to rise. Each time you draw it out, you press it to the anvil, smoothing it with the flat-faced hammer, then switch to the round-faced hammer to drive the iron's grain toward the edge. While the billet is still soft, you set a punch into the square hole on the anvil, striking in steady rhythm to open the bolt hole. The punch's ring against the anvil echoes in your chest like a small drum, regular, slowing your heartbeat to match. A useful thing. When the heart slows, the hand shakes less. You fold the hinge leaf, peering along the bend as you would along the rim of a bowl, searching for any crack hiding beneath the heat's glow. A crack means failure, like a wrinkle already buried in a face. Sooner or later, it will show. You reheat, smooth the fold with a peen hammer, then move on to shaping the pin loop. You recall the old smith's words. If the pin shaft is round, the leaf must be flat. And if the leaf is flat, temper it well. You turn the hinge so the fire paints the steel in a coat of aged straw yellow, quench it quickly in the water tub, and flick your wrist to shake off the steam. The hiss rises, fluttering like the water's fond scolding. Don't overdo it. Midway through the morning, a stranger stops at the door. His coat is damp with salt sweat, and in his hand is a sword, nicked half the width of a fingernail. I need it sharpened and polished before sunset. He sets down a few coins. eyes fixed on the forge as if seeing you as a kitchen stove. You weigh the choice. The hinge is work for the chapel. The sword is work for someone who has the right to grow angry right here. You say, "Afternoon, I'll sharpen it." He snorts, taps his fingernail 3 times on the anvil, and leaves. The sound leaves a cold streak on your skin. Encounters like this make you understand. A blacksmith shop is not really a shop. It is a place that bridges the strength of fire and the strength of those with power. Lean too far to either side, and you can be burned. You return to the hinge, changing hammers. The heavy hammer for driving force, the light hammer for stroking the shape. While switching hammers, you notice the skin on your right hand has split with a fresh, thin cut, likely from an iron scale that flew off earlier. You take a scrap of cloth, dip it in vinegar, and press it to the cut, the sour sting bringing water to your eyes. Once you rinsed such a wound with well water and it festered for a week. Afterward, you learned to keep the vinegar jar nearby like a charm. Bandaging while forging, this trade doesn't wait for you to heal before it moves on. Noon, and the church bells toll. You set down your hammer, listening to the rhythm pass along your back like someone smoothing their hand over tired muscle. You eat a piece of stale bread, sip water, and glance quickly at your small ledger. Your ugly handwriting tells a story no one reads. Nails, 12, kitchen knife, 1, horseshoes, 2 sets, hinges, 2 pairs, sword, 1. At the bottom of the page is a shorter line. Tax, next term. That short line weighs more than the whole page. You sigh, just like the bellows when they stop drawing breath. After noon, the man returns, his sword on the table. You heat the forge moderately, not blazing, just enough to soften the chipped area. You warm it, rub it lightly with fine sand to clean the surface, and use a small cross-peen hammer to restore the voice so the steel's grain lies down. Then you temper locally, bringing the blade's tip to a bright straw colour, quenching quickly, wiping with grease. Finally comes the grind on the stone, the sound long and steady, like a sheet of rain on a tiled roof. He tests the sword, brushing it lightly against the edge of a wooden beam, and nods. Before leaving, he taps the face of the anvil with a single thock, this time softer, like a silent acknowledgement. You do not smile, but the tension running along your spine eases. The afternoon slants and the second hinge is coming along well. You cut, punch holes, bend, fit, and temper. When it comes time to fit the pin, you slip. The clamp slides, and the edge of the leaf scrapes across your left hand. A red streak rises, the late sun filling it with an ambiguous orange glow. You grit your teeth. The water in the tub is murky. You pour a little vinegar into your palm and blow hard. The sting burns, then eases. You wrap it in cloth and return to your work, more aware of a simple truth the forge repeats over and over. Pain doesn't make metal soften faster. It only throws you off rhythm. Keeping the rhythm is how you work past the pain. While you grind the hinge's edge flat, the weaver's little boy slips in, holding a kitchen knife still sheathed in its wooden case. Mother says, "If it's not done yet, tomorrow is fine." He retreats into the shadows, afraid the fire will burn into his eyes. You nod, reminding him, "Hold it by the handle only. Don't touch the blade, even when it's cold." He nods rapidly, his deep black eyes reflecting a round furnace mouth like a red moon. There are customers like that, who bring into the forge a space to breathe, a small reason to remember that the work isn't only about beating the seal's deadline. Near dusk, the manor's men return. They inspect the hinges, nod, and place a small heavy pouch in your hand. You open it, not entirely coins inside. There's also a note for charcoal debt, and a promise that it will be deducted next time. You're not surprised. You tie the pouch shut and set it on the shelf. As they're about to leave, the one holding the papers remarks, almost offhandedly, "Inventory tomorrow morning." Those 2 words are like a fleck of ash falling into resting embers. Inventory means counting, weighing, inspecting, counting nails, weighing charcoal, checking the corners of the anvil, even scrutinising how you hang your tongs. 1 item wrong. Fine. 1 nail missing from an accepted order. Fine. A dirty forge on inspection day can sometimes mean a fine as well, if the inspector needs something to write in the ledger. That night you clean the forge more thoroughly than usual. You shake out the ash, scrape soot from the bellows pipe's mouth, wedge rawhide into a small tear in the bellows. You grind smooth the chipped edge of the anvil, drive the wedge deeper under its foot so the hammer falls softly. You wipe each hammer handle with a damp cloth, arranging them in order from heaviest to lightest, from flat face to round peen, like lining up letters for a row of children learning to read. You lift each tong, checking whether the spring at its spine is cracked. You inspect your leather apron and stitch one seam back together with hemp thread. These meticulous tasks won't change the tax ledger, won't defy the seal, but they make the forge stand a little straighter before the morning it will be scrutinised. You sit down, pull your small ledger closer and mark a short line. Inventory, early morning. Below it you draw a tiny anvil, the left edge crossed with diagonal lines. Your private sign to remember edge already ground. Then you look at your hands, the calluses like the scales of a creature that lives near fire, and suddenly recall a story from the next village, a blacksmith taken to the pillory for delivering short on an order. They said he wasn't lazy. He'd been sick, coughing without pause, his forge cold for several days. But the paper only said, late, find. You're not sure what makes you shiver more. The cough rattling in that man's chest or the calm faces of those who read the paper and walked away. Here, wrong means pay. No one asks to add the word because. You snuff the candle. Night in the forge has its own sounds. The slow breathing of the hearth under ash. The wind threading through plank gaps. The creak of your bones as you stretch. You curl up, thinking about tomorrow morning. The inspector will place the scales weight bag on the anvil, hook the balance onto the wooden peg, squint at the number. He will ask, how much charcoal left? This much. Bought from whom? Charcoal seller on the north bank. Price? Higher than last time. Receipt? In the pouch. You will answer each question, voice steady as the pull of the bellows. And all the while your eyes will keep flicking toward the corner of the forge to see whether the heart of the forge has caught. Inventory morning arrives like the church bells arriving on time. The inspector flips through the ledger, counts, notes. He runs a hand over the anvil's face, nodding when he sees the chipped edge has been ground, peers into the bellows pipe, gives a brief well done at the sight of the leather patch. But when he lifts the box of nail blanks and shakes it, it comes up 20 short compared to the number recorded last time. You explain. They were deducted for the carpenter's order last week, and there's a receipt. You open the ledger, searching for the paper, your sweat-damp hands making the pages stick together. A brief awkward pause, then you manage to pull out the small sheet, its ink smudged. He reads it, snorts. Make sure it's in the main ledger. Next time you're short without a slip. Fine. You bow your head. Yes. Those two syllables are both an answer and the feeling of dropping a stone from your chest. After the inspection, the forge returns to its own life, working the bellows, reading the colours, smoothing the grain, drinking water, rinsing your hands, dabbing vinegar, wrapping cloth. You forge a batch of nails to refill the box, cutting the iron strip into short lengths, heating them red, setting them into the nail-head swage on the thick steel plate, giving one firm thock to spread the head, pulling them out, cutting them free. The fresh nails fall into the box with a clatter like hail on a roof. You sit a little longer to count, yourself counting, until the box is full. It's the only way you know to push fine a little farther away. In the afternoon, the weaver's wife arrives. She takes the sharpened knife, tests it on a bundle of hemp fibre, and lets out a small "ah." She places a few purple onions and a bag of flour on the table. You mean to say no need, but your throat is dry. Those things will be tonight's dinner. She says, don't overwork yourself. I heard someone in the next village got fire to the face. You smile. Fire only does that when someone forgets to blow through their teeth. An old joke, but both of you understand. Jokes are a way to avoid talking about the whip, about tax deductions, about seals. The sun sets, the soot on the rafters deepening black. You stop by the forge, take the tongs and lift the heart of the forge, slightly so the ash hugs it close. You don't want to see a pile of dead charcoal in the morning. You hang the hammers back, set the tongs in place and tie the bellows shut against the wind. Then you sit, your fingers tracing over the calluses, counting them silently like counting hammer beats. 1, burn from last year. 2, cut during harvest. 3, iron scale from last week. 4, billet drop in winter. Each mark is a letter in the story of your trade. If someone asks, what wounds must a blacksmith bear? You would point to your hands, your shoulder, your lungs, your eyes that sometimes sting to blindness and say, they are the things no one can carry for you, yet they feed the whole village with what they hold. That night you sleep a little later than usual. Not because of hinges, not because of nails, but because you sit long at the forge's mouth, watching a thin stripe of moon slide past the cold opening, thinking idly, if one day you made a mistake, just once, what punishment would come? Pilloried in the market for half a day, every coin taken before you could touch it, the forge sealed until the next season. You answer yourself, then brush it aside with the familiar words, keep the rhythm. Here, keeping the rhythm means keeping your honour. Keeping your honour means keeping the forge. And keeping the forge means keeping yourself. You pull the cloth up to your chest, hear your lungs cough softly like the forge breathing, then drift off to sleep, to the far, faint sound of the worn old anvil, like the heartbeat of a gentle creature. Tomorrow morning you will rise again, work the bellows, watch the red rise, and the fire will take up its work where it left off, turning iron into something useful, turning a long day into one thock landing, exactly where it should. You wake before the roosters crow to a strange burning smell, not the familiar scent of ash, but the slow smoulder of straw from the storage shed across the lane. You spring up, grab the bucket of medicine water, still sitting beside the forge, and run out. It turns out a spark from the bellows pipe last night had flown into the neighbour's straw pile. Luckily, it had only caught at the edge. You throw the bucket's contents, the hiss rising like a sigh of relief. The neighbour opens the door, blanket still around their shoulders, and nods to you. Thanks to you. You smile wearily. Thanks to the light wind. Then you head back in, lay a hand on the anvil's body as if on the shoulder of a gentle creature, reminding it, we're still here. You stir the heart of the forge, the bellows breathing hard, the red pushing up. Today is meant to be a for the village day. Replenishing nails, finishing the last kitchen knife, a few collar bearings for wagon axles. Collar bearings are small but prone to trouble. Forge them too thick and they're heavy, too thin and they crack. Drill the hole even half a grain off and the wagon will rattle. The axle will overheat. The driver will curse. You measure carefully, mark 2 drill centres with a punch, forge the billet into a ring, weld it closed, hammer evenly so the grain runs true around the circle. While welding, you sprinkle just a little crushed sand, only a little, then drive the hammer home, listening for the metal's voice to shift from scattered to thick and pliant. You quench quickly to catch the seam, then move to the grindstone to smooth away the still charred burrs. For a moment you forget the morning cough, forget even the smell of vinegar. There is only the steady rhythm of the hammer, like a heartbeat. In the midst of that steady rhythm comes the rapid thud of hobnailed boots outside the eaves. You look up. 2 men from the manor, along with a wagon driver pale as ash, haul a cracked collar bearing to the anvil and drop it with a thock. The fracture runs from the outer edge almost to the centre, the break face pale as bone. The driver spits, his voice curt. Broke right on the slope to the gate. Wagon tipped, grain spilled. The Lord's furious. Called for you. The one holding papers unrolls a strip of leather and reads in an icy tone. Fault in work, fine. Pay with 2 new collars and 1 day at the pillory, or the equivalent in coin. Today. He holds out the document, the red wax bulging like an unblinking eye. You don't rush to argue. You lift the bearing, hold it close to the forge so the red light shines into the break. The steel grain is coarse, with a cold line folded inside. Sign of a quench too quick? Or had the billet's metal carried the flaw from the start? You remember clearly the day you made this piece. Wet charcoal, the forge breathing unevenly. You pumped the bellows hard, caught the seam just tight when the evening bells began to ring. You quenched it a little too deep, your arm too tired to temper back enough. A mistake no bigger than a breath now stands before you like a verdict. You swallow, your throat as dry as the straw from this morning. Give me one day, you say. I'll forge 2 new collars. I won't stand at the pillory. I'll take the money fine. The man with the papers looks at you. One day, before sunset, 2 collars and 4 wedge nails. The Lord doesn't slow for you. You nod. As they turn away, the driver smirks faintly. Make them straight. The Lord's axle doesn't take kindly to a tilt. You don't reply. You've heard enough sideways reminders for an entire smith's life. You set the billet into the forge at once. Today the fire is fed with extra care. Charcoal stacked in a spiral like a bird's nest. The bellows drawn slow and deep. You forge the first collar, driving the edge so the grain coils round, smoothing the back for flatness. As the seam nears closing, you scatter a pinch of sand, hammering in short, firm strokes so the steel eats into itself. You don't quench immediately. You let it cool in the air for a breath, temper back, then bring it to straw colour and touch it to the water, only halfway round, so you don't harden the whole piece. The ring hums with a deep tone, nothing like the dry sound from earlier. You nod, set it aside and start the second. Between the 2 collars you feel the blister on your right hand break, old skin peeling away, wet beneath the cloth wrap. You don't put the hammer down. You shift your grip, letting the handle rest deeper in your palm, so the uninjured part bears the blow. You continue, the salt of your sweat falling into the raw blister, stinging sharply enough to blur your eyes. You draw breath through your teeth, the hammer's rhythm unchanged. Near noon, an iron scale shoots into your face, catching right at your eyelid. The sudden searing heat nearly makes you drop the hammer. You kneel, take the water jug, pull your eyelid up with a blackened fingernail, letting the water flush the scale out. The rinse turns cloudy, and at last the fragment drops away, tiny, yet enough to make your eyes stream as if you've been crying. You tilt your head back, blink lightly, and chuckle to yourself. Don't cry now. Then you stand, switch hammers, and return to the second collar. Small incidents like this in this trade are called the fire tax. No paperwork, but always collected. You snatch a bite of dry bread, take a gulp of water and work the bellows. The second collar closes its seam as neatly as an answer you've been hoping to hear. You grind both ends, measure the holes, test it on the spare axle shaft you keep propped in the forge's corner. Round, no wobble. You make the 4 wedge nails. The hammer's sound changes to the thock-thock of the chisel. Steady, steady. Your eye no longer burns, but your wrist begins to tremble. Sign of the day's limit. But you ignore it. By the start of the Shen hour, the 2 collars and 4 nails sit in order on the table. You quickly wipe on a bit of oil, wrap them in cloth, and call for the manners men. They arrive, suspicion in their eyes already softened. The one with the papers tries the collar on the axle they brought. Nods good. Then he holds up the fine slip. You open your pouch. The money inside is enough for half a season's charcoal. You count it out and push it forward. Your left hand trembles slightly, not from regret for the coins, but because each one falling feels like a hammer blow against something unseen. The feeling that you still own a small part of the forge. Today, that part feels thinner. Pillory? You ask. He glances at the other man, then says, waved. Goods before the U hour. You bow your head. Thank you. Not exactly out of gratitude, but from exhaustion. When they leave, you drop heavily onto the doorstep, the ringing in your ears swelling like a wave. Over time, that ringing becomes part of a blacksmith's background music. When it goes silent, you feel oddly empty. You slip a hand into your shirt pocket and touch the vinegar cloth, strangely reassured that in a day when everything else has slipped from your grasp, at least one habit remains that no one can deduct. As evening falls, ordinary customers finally dare to come by. The barrel hauler asks for 12 barrel nails. The weaver's wife inquires whether her kitchen knife is done. The boy who brought the knife yesterday runs over just to say, "Mother doesn't tear up when chopping onions anymore." You smile. You scoop 12 nails into a hemp pouch. They're clinked like hail on a roof. You fix the loose knife handle, drive in an extra pin. These tiny tasks gathered together make up your share of the day. The part with no seal, no ledger, no fine if you're an hour late. When the sun is fully gone, you are tidying the forge when the inspector from the morning before yesterday stops by. He stands at the threshold, asking casually, "Heard the axle collar broke?" You nod. "Fine?" "Yes." "Pillory?" "No." He glances around your forge, then rarely says something not found in the ledger. If you're short on charcoal, don't buy from the North Bank batch. That lot's mixed with dirt. Hard to catch a seam. You look up. For the first time, you notice something at the corner of his mouth that resembles a trace of humanity. You murmur, "All right." He leaves. You stand there a moment longer, feeling your chest unexpectedly lighter. Within that great machine of ledgers, sometimes a single link will give a small click, as if wanting to slow the gears. Night comes late. You sit before the darkened forge, using a needle to pick out the tiny, black specks lodged under your skin, the shooting stars of the trade. Then rub grease into the blisters. The smell of grease mixed with vinegar, with ash and the faint scorch of leather becomes a private scent only a blacksmith could find comforting. You write in the ledger, "Axle collar, 2, on time. Fine, paid." Beneath that you add another line, "Remember to temper back." A note to yourself, don't let a single breath turn into a whole day's price. You lean back against the wall, thinking of the punishments you've seen. Half a day at the pillory in the market. The rope marks left on a bound face. 5 lashes behind the storehouse. The sound of leather on skin like a hammer striking wet wood. A forge sealed for an entire season. The anvil moved to the manor's storeroom. The heart lifted out of a chest. Sometimes a man exiled to another village. Forbidden to work under the guild's ledger. You don't recall these things to frighten, but to remember that here, wrong leaves no room for a long explanation. The only thing you can do is narrow the space for wrong through habit. Read the colours more carefully, temper a weld for longer, rest your hand in time so the hammer doesn't miss, so your ears ring less. These small habits save you from the greater punishments. Then you think of another weight, quieter than any lash, charcoal prices rising like a tide, the tax ledger thickening with pages, the church needing roof nails, the manor needing gate hinges, the soldier needing a new spearhead, the common folk needing sharp knives. And you, amid all these needs, needing a long enough sleep so your hands don't shake tomorrow. If someone were to ask, what does it mean for a blacksmith shop to be under a landlord's rule? You would point to the folded fine slip, to the coin pouch now thinner, to the charcoal load you'll have to buy on credit tomorrow, and then to the anvil itself, something that is yours, yet never entirely yours. You would say, it's like this, I have the forge, but they have the right to choose when the fire counts as the right work. Before sleeping, you make one more round. Wedge the block under the anvil's foot again. Test the bellows for any strange hiss. Tighten the leather strap at your coat's edge. You touch each hammer, naming them in your head as if calling your own name. Heavy, light, round peen, pointed peen, flat-faced. Each one a way of speaking to iron. You murmur, tomorrow is nail day. You'll forge another chest of nails so that when someone shakes it, the clatter will answer for you. You know no one will pat your shoulder for a full chest of nails. But a full chest is a better guard against punishment than any promise. You climb onto the cot, pull the cloth over you, the burn in your back easing under the night's cool breath. Your ears still ring, but in that ringing there's a familiar rhythm, the rhythm of a hammer falling true. You recall the morning, the smell of straw catching fire, the hiss when water put it out. A blacksmith's life folded into those two sounds: flare and quench, heat and cool, mistake and repair. You close your eyes. If someone right now were sitting beside you and asked, "Why is it so frightening to be punished for a mistake?" you wouldn't offer philosophy. You'd speak in a voice as soft as falling ash. Because here what keeps a man walking straight isn't a promise, but the real marks on his hands and on his honour. And that's why tomorrow I'll rise early again, work the bellows steady, and let the fire keep telling its story, turning small mistakes into right habits. Outside, wind threads through the door's cracks, carrying the scent of straw just put out, blended with the night smell. The forge is silent, but the heart of the forge hides under the ash still glowing, a red dot the size of a fingertip, enough that tomorrow morning you'll only need one pull of the bellows for the fire to wake. You smile in the dark. Despite the ledgers, despite the red seals, despite the whip waiting at the market's end, that ember still belongs to you. And you, the blacksmith of tomorrow, still belong to that ember until your hands can no longer lift the hammer. You still thought a new day would begin like any other, stirring the charcoal, working the bellows, reading the steels red. But this morning, instead of the bellows, you hear the sound of a stick tapping at your threshold. Thock, thock, thock. The town's ledger keeper stands there with two soldiers in doublets, holding a roll of parchment stamped with the townsman's seal. He reads aloud, voice cold as early frost. From the feast of St. Michael onward, all blacksmiths within the bounds of the town and the manor lands must be registered in the guild ledger. Any who forge and sell without registration, fine and anvil, confiscated. Any who are registered but fail to pay the stamp fee, fine doubled. He hands you a small piece of lead stamped with a saint's image, saying, "Here's this quarter's stamp. Every item sold must be entered in the ledger, with the stamp number recorded." Then he lets fall a thin smile. Do it right, and you'll be at ease. They leave behind the smell of damp leather and fresh ink, like a rope just cinched tighter around the forge's neck. You roll the paper, tuck it into your small ledger, stir the heart of the forge, and work the bellows a couple of strokes to steady yourself. Then you tighten your coat's cord, bolt the door, strap on your leather apron, and set off for town before market hour. The dirt road is still wet with dew, cartwheels from the hay wagons leaving shallow ruts. Through the wooden gate you pay the market toll, 2 copper coins with a reminder to remember your receipt. Then pass rows of stalls selling cloth, salt and freshly cut barrels. The blacksmith's guild hall sits beside a small stream where a water wheel powers a great hammer, the water hammer, that strikes evenly at billets too large for a man's arm to work in half a day. Each time the hammer falls, the ground under your feet shivers slightly. You feel an answering beat in your chest, like the forge's heart inside the ash. Inside the guild hall, the charcoal smells cleaner than yours. Here they burn hardwood charcoal from the northern forest, hot burning and low smoke. An old smith with a silver beard, perhaps the guild master, sits behind a table beside a thick locked chest. You present the town's paper and place the lead stamp on the table. He looks at the stamp, then at your hands, at the calluses, and nods. You're a working smith, not a man selling stamped work. He asks what you forge most: plough blades, hinges, horseshoes, nails, sometimes spearheads. You add the times you've repaired small bells, really the clappers inside them, and tempered kitchen knives for dried goods traders. The guild master notes it down, voice even. Guild registration fee, stamp fee, bellows timber fee. Each fee drops onto the table like a hammerfall into the pouch in your coat. You count out the coins and push them over. He nods, handing back to you a thin wooden plaque carved with the guild seal and a number. Stamp this on the goods you sell. Your work has a name now. A name, but one that comes with responsibilities. The guild spells out clearly. No underpricing nails, no tempering knives in dirty water, lest they turn brittle. No buying hollow billets from the open market. Violators will be fined. You nod at it all, knowing the guild is a thin roof, but when the storm comes, a thin roof is still better than standing in the rain. On your way out, you stop at the charcoal stall. The burner opens a new batch for you, black and light, snapping quickly under his fingernail. You smell dry oak. You buy a sack, the price higher than last month as always. Back at the forge, you hang the guild plaque where it's easily seen, just beside the door, then arrange the charcoal in the hearth like a bird's nest, working the bellows so the fire bites deep. Tomorrow someone will come asking for goods with a stamp. Today, you decide to make something that both shows off the stamp and feeds you. A set of even roof nails and 2 sets of horseshoes for the elephant keeper. You cut the iron strip into short lengths, heat them red, set them on the anvil, and in the square nail header give 1 thock to spread the head before drawing the shank. Each nail falling into the chest makes a slightly different note: full, even, thick, and your ear, long trained, can tell even the one with a slightly thin head from the one with a narrow shank. You mark this batch with a tiny file cut on the shank, your own private sign, because from now on if someone lifts a handful of nails to complain, the guild will ask, "Whose are these?" Yours, or someone else's, will no longer be in doubt. By mid-morning the manor's men arrive again. 2 horses need shoeing, 1 a war horse, 1 a cart puller. You nod and start shaping the shoes. You forge each to fit the hoof, wide for a soft hoof, narrow for a hard one. You punch the nail holes at a slight angle so the clinched ends will hug the hoof wall. At fitting, you clean the horn, trim it level, and heat the shoe lightly, so it bites the horn, white smoke rising with a bitter smell. Newcomers often cry out, "Don't hurt it," but you know the horse feels no pain if your hand works true. The hiss is only horn meeting heat, not flesh. Golden afternoon light pours through the forge door as you let the fire ease and turn to grinding. Grinding is the day's cooling hour. The grindstone's song across steel is a long refrain, slowing your breath, drawing the ringing from your ears. You polish the weaver's wife's knife until it shines with straw gold, then stamp it lightly with oil to keep it. You make a heavy gate ring. Today's chapel hinges have gone to the guild, but the villagers still need things sturdy and simple. You quench the ring, feeling the heat slip from your fingertips like an unspoken apology between you and the fire when it's time to hang the hammers. You open your small ledger and write a line, the letters larger than usual, as if to remind yourself, Guild Day, registered. Below it a sigh in ink, fees paid. Then you jot a question, as if asking yourself and the listener both, do you think a blacksmith's work in what people call the Middle Ages is harder because of the fire or because of the seal? The answer needn't be quick. It lies in the rhythm of day after day. The fire is hot. Everyone knows that, but the seal is cold. And it's that cold that ties your hands more. That night you sit longer at the threshold, watching the narrow road drift by like a dark stream. You think of those 3 great historical ages, as you think of 3 layers of steel in a weld. The old layer beneath, the tales of those before, the one you live in now, rules mixed with sweat, the layer to come, something the unborn will give a name to. In this middle layer, you, a small smith, learn to live between the bans, decrees, of the landlord, the church bells, the eye of the guild, and the hands that need knives, nails, horseshoes. This morning's surprise, the paper, the lead stamp, and the ledger keeper's thin smile, turns out to be just another piece pressed into a mould of life already tight. Before bed you make your round, wedge the anvil's foot, cinch the bellows cord, give 1 pull to hear the wind smooth. You wash your hands in vinegar water, grease the blisters, use a needle to pick out an iron scale still buried in your skin. The flake drops with a faint tink to the floor, tiny yet leaving a pinhole in the flesh. You press it closed with another finger, like driving an invisible nail. Then you snuff the candle. In the dark you can still hear the guild's water hammer far off, falling steadily into the night like a lullaby of iron. You think, tomorrow when you hang the guild seal at the door, you'll allow yourself a small smile. Not because you love the seal, but because in the rules of this age, it is at least a roof against the rain. And beneath that roof, you still have the right to tell your story in the sound of the bellows, the hammer, and in the calluses on your hands. The small history of an ordinary craftsman. Right in the middle of the three ages the books always speak of. You thought today would be nothing more than the steady rhythm of the hammer, but right after morning prayer, the guild's messenger returned, carrying under his arm a small plank carved with letters. He set it down on your table and said curtly, "This week the guild will assess candidates for the title of Master Smith. Anyone wishing to retain the right to stamp their own mark must submit a sample work before sunset on Friday." Then he let his eyes flick to the guild signboard you had only hung yesterday, and continued, "If you don't submit, you will still have the right to stamp, but all transactions must be recorded under another master's name. The fee will be 1.5 times higher." He left as quickly as he came, leaving in your forge a different kind of silence. The silence of an exam no one forces you to take, but that, if you don't, will cost you for a long time. Sample work, you repeated to yourself. In the guild, they often required a lock with 3 matching keys, or a heavy rolled hinge that still opened and closed smoothly, or a large ring strong enough to hang a small bell. You looked around the forge. Hammer, anvil, grindstone, bellows, tongs, nail header, the steel plate with a square hole, hardy, and a round hole, pritchel, water trough, jar of vinegar. Everything was what you had used your whole life. The test, if there was one, was just the guild's way of making you gather all your habits into a single day and lay them on their table in the form of one concrete object. You decided, make a lock, something that would show skill and also that you knew the speech of steel. A lock body that could take blows, a spring that would flex, a bolt with grooves that fit tight, a key that would turn smoothly. You cut a billet into a box, bent the steel spine into a lid, forged the bolt, stamped the keys bit, filed the wards. The first lines you file are always the most tentative. The metal is still cold. The hammer's sound is coarse. Your hand not yet in rhythm. You heat, upset, smooth, test. At each step you keep the habit of reading the colours. Cherry red, pliable, orange red, soft to the core, straw, ready for quenching, dull blue, gone too far. Your eyes have learned these shades the way a farmer knows the colour of clouds. Just as you were packing the grain of the bolt, the weights inspector, the man who roams the town, checking all measures, stopped by. He set his weight sack on the anvil, his voice dry. "There's been a complaint about some roofing nails being lighter than regulation." He demanded to weigh your chest of nails. You brought it out, let him shake, scoop, and weigh. The scale tilted slightly. He narrowed his eyes. You opened your ledger, pointed to the batch made yesterday under the guild mark, with your own tiny notch cut into the shank, then poured out a few handfuls for him to choose at random. He weighed them carefully, then finally gave the faxar, faintest nod. They pass. Before leaving, he tossed back a remark not written in any ledger. "Too many forges are over-tempering. Buyers complain. Keep your rhythm and keep the weight." You bowed your head. In this time, not only fire has a temperament, the scales do too. You went back to the lock. Every familiar technique you gathered, using the round-faced hammer to drive the metal to the edge. The flat-faced hammer to true up the body, the punch to open the keyhole, and then widen it on the anvil's step. You bent the spring, tempered it to straw colour, quenched quickly, then let it breathe in the air a moment. A purple-blue bloom appeared soon on the spring, a sign of just enough. You smiled faintly, your hand unconsciously wiping sweat from your brow, the salt stinging your eyes so you blinked, shut them, exhaled through your teeth, and opened again. Every hammer blow was steady as a prayer you've long since memorised, even if you rarely make it to the chapel on Sundays. The forge rests that day, unless it's fire rescue work, fixing something at once to prevent disaster. At noon you ate bread, drank water, and sat watching the lock cool as if watching a sleeping child, watching to remember the spots to free, the edges to file, the gaps to ease. You thought of the guild. They make rules to keep the craft's face. They collect dues to keep the roof overhead. They grant marks so you have a name. In return, you write your name in their book and accept being called up at any time, like today. You don't love the rolls of leather-bound ledgers, but you know between the lord of the manor and the town, the guild is something like a fence. Thin, but better than none. In the afternoon, the manor's men came again with an urgent request. Iron rims for the night watch's shields. Rumour said thieves near the manor's border. Extra patrols tonight. You couldn't refuse. You switched the forge to a heavy rhythm. Thick stock, heavy hammer, deep bellows. Shield rims didn't need to be pretty like a chapel hinge, but they had to be even, free of teeth, their bolt holes aligned. You forged each rim, drilled holes, bent to the wooden form. Test fit. The fire roared. Your shoulder ached in the old spot. Iron scale spat and stuck to your leather apron. Your knees stiffened like wood. You changed feet, changed hands, never letting the hammer's beat falter. Before dusk, the watch came to collect. They pressed the rims to the shield edges, tapped thunk thunk around the circumference. One soldier smiled, saying neat work. The man with the receipt form was as cold as always. Received. You needed no praise. Those 2 words, received, were enough for you to sleep better tonight. They left and you turned your eyes back to the lock. The hardest part waited last, making keys that fit without comedy. No scraping, no sticking, no slack. You sat by candlelight, slipping the cold hard. Key into the lock, marking with soot, pulling it out, filing where the black showed. You repeated this 10 times the same. Each time, the spring under the lock's lid gave a little click, like a mouse in a chest. On the 11th try, the key turned, just heavy enough, and the bolt dropped with a soft clack. You exhaled, feeling like you'd set a stone exactly right in a wall. You tested the other 2 keys, filed away the last sooty marks. When all 3 turned smoothly, you dabbed a little oil on the bolt, wiped, blew through your teeth, heard the faint rah of oil spreading, then set the whole set on the table. Tomorrow, you take it to the guild. You closed the forge late. Tonight's fire you banked deeper. The forge's heart buried in ash. You washed your hands in vinegar water, picked the fine iron splinters from under your skin, greased the blister that had ripened since collaring the shaft, changed the cloth wrap on your wrist. These were the rites of a work day. Like the way the church collects a tithe, the town collects gate tolls, the guild collects registry dues. The forge collects too. Iron scale under your skin, tiny burn marks on your neck, the ringing in your ears that lasts until sleep. And all these collections you pay by rising half an hour earlier the next morning. At night, lying down, your hands still strike the air. In your head, the old questions return, repeating like the bellows. Can a small mistake lead to a large punishment? Yes. Can a well-kept day lighten the load of the ledgers? Only a little. Can a blacksmith shop under a lord's thumb ever truly be your own? Yes, in the exact moment the key turns smooth, the bolt fits tight, and no one stands at the door reading a paper. The next morning, you wrapped the lock and keys, tied them with hemp cord, and carried them to the guild hall. The examination room was small, thick-walled, with 3 master smiths behind a wooden table. They asked little. They looked, they tested, they turned, they looked up, they nodded, they tapped very lightly on the edge of the anvil displayed in the room, as if in prayer. One took a thin blade and tried to lift the bolt. It did not move. Another tried the 3rd key, the hardest, and turned it once, hearing the perfect tack. Then the chief master took a small punch and stamped the guild's mark on the inside of the lock lid, adding a tiny, personal mark of yours in the corner. Your own mark, which will follow you from now on. You didn't leap, you only bowed, feeling your shoulder bones heavy, as if you'd just taken off a soaked shirt. The master said, From now on, you may hang your signboard under your own name. Keep the guild's laws. Keep the feast days. Keep the weight. Do not forge on Sunday, except for fire rescue. Do not undercut the price of nails. Do not take hollow billets. You've known these rules by heart, but hearing them now felt new because they came with the right to hang the sign, a small plank with the hammer and anvil emblem, at your forge door. On the way home, you bought a scrap of red cloth, meaning to tie it to the sign in celebration. But at the door, you stopped. You remembered. Here, attaching the sign isn't just joy. It's also another entry in the tax ledger. Signboard is counted too. You laughed at yourself, tucked the cloth into the chest, hung the sign plain. That was enough. The day faded into evening with small tasks. Shoeing the grey you know well, fixing a neighbour's door latch, regrinding a scythe blade. While grinding, you watched the steel's colour on the stone, from cold grey to bright, then thin as mist. The drawn-out rasp of the stone calmed you after the examination. Each turn was a reminder. Your hands still work to their own rhythm, even if outside now hangs a piece of wood with your name. When you hung up the hammer, you opened your ledger and wrote, "Lock submitted. Personal mark received." Then you added a line as if speaking to the reader of the tale. Hear yourself. The Middle Ages are the middle part. The middle part has many marks. Each mark adds a button. You didn't philosophize further. You greased your hands, snuffed the candle, listened to the forge breathe softly under the ash. Across the road, the church bell tolled the hour. At the street's end, the watch blew the curfew whistle. You slid the bolt on your door, telling yourself, tomorrow will be nails, hinges, shoes, and maybe a new paper knocking. But tonight at least you know, when someone at the market uses a lock, turning it with a smooth tack, inside it will be the guild stamp and a tiny mark of yours. That is how you exist in the middle part of the three ages the books always speak of. By small things quietly done right, endured and carried on. You are sharpening a scythe when the church bell suddenly tolls in quick succession, a quarter hour earlier than usual. It's not the hour for prayer. It's the curfew bell announcing the town's new order. This week, because dry winds are blowing from the west and thatched roofs have cracked, no fires are to be lit after evening prayers. The bell ringer runs along the narrow street shouting, "If you still have a fire, bank the coals. If you still have bellows, bar them shut." His voice mingles with the clang of hobnailed boots striking stone. You lift your head from the whetstone, tasting a faint trace of vinegar in your throat by reflex. Shutting the forge early means crowding more work into the daylight. Nails, hinges, horseshoes, and the lock the guild has only just stamped for you. You pump the bellows once, briefly, then use tongs to tuck the forge's heart deeper, covering it with ash like a thin blanket. The forge quiets, breathing faintly. Tomorrow you will wake it earlier. In the unusual early silence, you can hear the street clearly. A heavy wagon passes, leaving wooden tracks from its wheels. A salt cellar pulls her cloak tighter. A small boy murmurs the alphabet as he follows a friar. You sit on the doorstep, looking at the newly hung sign, the one with a hammer and anvil, the guild mark carved deep, glimmering faintly in the dusk. The sign is as plain as the forge itself, yet in your chest it is both heavy and light. Heavy because it's another entry in the ledger, light because it's your name, not a borrowed one. The next morning you rise before the rooster's breath, unbar the door, and listen to the wind. It's truly dry, sweeping through the valley, scraping your skin like sandpaper. You pump the bellows, calling back the red from under the ash. The fire rises with a familiar of greeting. Today you set yourself a rhythm. Roof day. The dry wind season is the season of creaking roofs. Creaking roofs mean people remember nails. A full chest of nails is your seawall against any weight checks. You cut blanks, heat them red, set them over the square hole, strike the head with a thunk, draw the shank, point it 1, 2, 3. Each one falls into the chest with its own note. You know them as a shepherd knows his flock. In the early light, sparks spray like grey stars, clinging to your leather apron, falling on the back of your hand to leave brown specks that will become callous in a few days. Amid that steady rhythm, the rap of a stick on your gate. Tock tock returns. Not the manners man this time, but the church's tithe collector. He comes with a boy carrying a ledger and a cloth sack. It's St. Martin's term, he says. Record what's been made for sale. Pay the portion. You point to the nail chest, the stack of finished horseshoes, the row of hinges waiting for pickup. The boy writes, while the cleric glances around, fingers brushing the face of your anvil, as though it were a small altar, then pulling back quickly, his robed hand not used to heat. Doing good, he says, is forging true and weighing square. It sounds like a clumsy blessing, but you nod, because you too want things true and square. That's the only way this trade lets you sleep at peace. When they've gone, you return to the bellows. Salt sweat starts stinging your eyes. You blink, breathe through your teeth, your hammer rhythm unchanged. You switch to horseshoes when the sun is as high as the roof peak. The black post horse from the relay is led in, its hind leg a little off. It slipped on the cobbles at the north gate, the owner says. You tie it to the post, murmur easy, clean the hoof, trim, fit the shoe, drive nails at a slant so the heads hook into the wall of the hoof. The smoke from horn meeting heat rises like a sigh, but the animal stands still. Your hand goes right. When the black shoe hugs tight, the courier exhales as if only then remembering to breathe. The mail route does not wait for a wobbly shoe. As you finish the second shoe, a doublet-clad shadow blocks the sun at your door. It's the weight inspector, today checking coal, not nails. North Bank charcoal? He asks, eyes sliding over the pile you've just poured. You nod. He picks up a piece, snaps it. It cracks sharp with little dust. He grunts approval. Dry wind, watch the fire in the tuyere, he says. Then, like last time, add something off the record. No fires tonight. Don't let the forge heart breathe too much. You answer, I know, and you truly do. Such small things decide whether you sleep like a stone or lie awake, hearing the forge cough faintly in its ash. By noon you let the forge rest half a quarter to save fuel. Eat dry bread. Drink a swallow of water. On the wall, sunlight slips through a plank gap in a slow beam, sweeping like the hand of a clock you don't own. You look at your hands, fingers stiff as oak, nails scored, layers of callus stacked. You think about the injuries of the trade, phrases that have become names: iron scale eye, hammer elbow, forge lung, anvil knee. None big enough to make anyone ask after you for more than a day, but stacked together, they are a long kind of tax. A tax not written in any ledger, not paid in coins, but in tiny marks on the body. By afternoon you're making hinges for the side gate of the town's warehouse. A warehouse door has eyes. It sees you when you're careless. You measure, punch bolt holes in line, fold edges, temper to straw colour. The hiss when you quench reminds you of last week's tale. The smith in the next village put in the pillory because a hinge stuck and the chapel's doors wouldn't open for prayers. People blamed rust, blamed night dew, but the record wrote only a dry line. Door stuck, smith at fault. Here the Middle Ages, the period between antiquity and the early modern era as Westerners divide. It doesn't ask long whys, it writes short verbs: forge, deliver, receive, punish. You understand this and you forge to avoid the last verb. Before dusk the watch patrol passes, raising torches to peer into your forge as if asking, out yet? You stir the ash to show them the heart already asleep. No red showing. They nod, move on, torchlight sliding a yellow streak over the new sign. You shut the door, light a candle, turn to night's fireless work, dusting the ledger, grinding on a cold stone, oiling hammer handles, stitching the bellows cord with flax, checking tongs. You pick iron scale from your skin with a needle. Each fleck hits the floor with a soft tick, tiny but persistent. Then you open your small book, write a line, Nails, full. Shoes, 2. Hinges, 1 pair. Charcoal, North Bank. Beneath it you draw a short stroke like a command to yourself. Keep rhythm. One night you dream of the water hammer at the guild house falling as evenly as rain on a slate roof. And in the dream, a silver-haired master asks you, "In the middle part of the 3 ages, what do you still want?" You hear yourself answer without fear. A full chest of nails, a sign never taken down, and a forge never sealed. The master nods. You wake to dim light. A few days later, the big market opens. From the town's edge, landowners, carters, carpenters, coopers, tanners stream in. You set up a small table before your forge, stretch rough cloth, lay out nails in bundles, shoes in pairs, hinges in 2s, and a lock plainer than your showpiece, but smooth and firm in the hand. The hammer anvil sign hangs right above, guild mark beneath. Shoppers touch, tap, weigh. A carpenter lifts a nail bundle, shakes it, smiles. Sounds full. A housewife tests a knife edge, slicing lightly through a cabbage stem, nodding. In the crowd, the weight inspector slips through, looking, saying nothing, but his eyes pause on the private notch carved in your nail shanks, as if confirming, "I know whose they are." Midday, a retainer of the Lord stops at the lock. He holds it, turns the key, hears the click, sets it down, asks, "Gate lock for the wine store. On a dry wind night. How do I keep it from sticking?" You answer slowly, "Don't over-temper. Leave the bolt just thick enough. Round the edge of the stop. Smear thin beef tallow. And each week turn the key once when the fire's cold." He grunts. "Price? You name it." He pays without haggling. Before leaving, he raps a short thunk on the anvil's edge. The tap of a man who accepts. You watch the coin vanish into the cloth sack, feeling your back lighten a beat. When the market thins, you pack the table, draw the cloth, count the chest, missing exactly the bundles sold. The clink-clack left sounds like late rain, enough to make you smile. An old woman stops by, sets down some lard and a few onions, saying, "For the sharp knife from the cart of the day." You take it without adding up. Such trades are often more useful than silver. Lard to grease, onions to warm a coughing lung. You stow the lard, wrap the onions, and return to the forge, calling back the fire. By evening, word comes from the guild. Next week they'll celebrate the feast day of the metalsmith's patron saint. A day when people eat less and talk more about the craft's rules. You're not one for gatherings, many voices make your ears ring worse. But on that day, the guild often names the forges that keep the rules, keep the weights, keep the rest days. You don't aim for your name, you aim for a smooth season of charcoal. Even so, you mend your leather apron, wipe hammer handles, knowing that at the guild's shared table, people also look at each other's hands to see who truly forges and who forges words. The night before the feast, the wind shifts, carrying a strange damp scent. You bank the forge heart more carefully, tie the bellows cord tight, hang hammers in order. You sit on the doorstep, watching the empty street, thinking of the punishments of this age. The pillory, lashes behind the storehouse, fines, sealing of the forge, and one more, silent and long. Being struck from the guild, forced to forge under another's name, living in the shadow of someone else's sign. You shiver at the wind and at the thought. Then you tell yourself, as every night, keep rhythm. On the feast morning you go to the guild house. The main hall is hung with coarse cloth banners. In the centre stands a great polished anvil, the water hammer in the yard falling steady like a far-off drum. They read the rules. No forging on Sundays, except firefighting. No selling below guild price. No hollowing the billet. No hiding coal debts. They read the names of forges fined and forges praised. Yours is in neither list. Strangely, that feels like safety. In the middle part of the 3 ages of the West, ordinary is the best armour for a working man. Back home you light the forge, pump the bellows. When the fire reaches the colour of a speckled hen's egg, you set the next hinge billet. Hammer falls. Thunk, thunk, steady. In that steadiness, you bridge to a thought that has quietly grown over these past days. You live in a century that will not name people like you, but the things you forge will live everywhere. On rooftops, nails, on warehouse gates, hinges, under horses' hooves, shoes, in the pocket of the key holder, locks. When night falls and the curfew bell sounds, no one will speak your name. But the door will close smooth, the horse will walk without stumble. The roof will hold in the wind. That is your signature, etched into the day in a way no ledger can erase. You smile, a smile only the forge hears. Then you tilt your head, read the steel's colour, breathe through your teeth, drive the grain, smooth the face. Outside, the watch changes shift, the sound of hobnails fading. In the forge, the heart stays warm like an old promise. Tomorrow there will be nails, hinges, shoes. Tomorrow there may be a new paper, a new stamp, a new demand. But as long as the hammer still falls true, and your hand still keeps rhythm, then between antiquity and the early modern, in that middle the world calls the Middle Ages, you will still have a small forge to tell your story in metal, quietly, steadily, and enough for others to sleep easy under their roofs. You haven't even had time to sit down for your first warm sip of the day when 3 even knocks sound at the door, dry as a hammer falling on wet wood. Thud, thud, thud. Not the weighmaster, not the guildsman. It's the manor steward. Dark doublet, hood pulled low. Behind him, 2 servants carry a small iron chest. He lays a strip of leather on the table, the letters marching straight. The lord requires 1 locking bar for the west granary door, 2 wrist shackles, and a crossbar for the side gate. Deadline, before evening prayers the day after tomorrow. Strength to be tested on sight. If it breaks or jams, fined under town law. He pauses, staring at the anvil as if speaking to it. Don't make me answer for you. You nod, no argument. You know that here, in the middle of the 3 ages by which the West divides its history, where habits and ledgers bind people tight, a no often costs more than a whole sack of coal. When they leave, the forge holds the damp leather smell of them, and fresh ink mingled with old ash. You work the bellows, call the fire awake. The red comes slow, then spreads evenly through the bird nest stack of coal you've made by instinct. The old blister at the web of your right thumb begins to heat again. Warning. Today is heavy. You start with the gate crossbar. Crude, heavy work, but little trickery. Forge the spine thick to bear force. Round the edges to save the wood from chipping. Line up the bolt holes straight so the carpenter won't curse you. You measure against the wooden template. Punch guide marks. Set the billet in the fire. Wait for a deep orange. The heavy hammer drops in even thuds. Flat face on the spine, rounded face drawing the edge. Between strokes, scale spits and pings, sticking to the leather apron, falling on the back of your hand to leave new brown specks that will callous over by next week. A fire tax never written in any book. Next, the lock. More care here. Steel for the bolt must be soft in the body, hard at the biting end. The lock cover must sit snug. The key bit fit flush. You forge the box, bend the lid, punch the keyhole with a drift, widen it on the anvil's round hole, steady enough to keep the edge from tearing. You read the heat like a farmer reads clouds. Old straw, quench, young leaf, too far, blue-violet, missed it, reheat. The spring you temper at straw yellow, quench quick, then cools slowly in open air. A gold line runs its spine like a sewn seam. You're pleased enough to remind yourself, don't smile yet. The easiest ruin comes in the last step. The shackles are heavy on the hand and on the heart. You draw them from strap steel, bend them round, close the weld with a pinch of fine ground sand thrown at the right breath. The bolt is a sliding type, hole beveled, so grit won't jam it. Your hands work true, but your mind carries a question you will not give voice to. Whose wrists will these touch? In this age, craft doesn't ask. Much. It writes, Forge, deliver, receive, deduct, fine. You keep your rhythm to dodge the last word. By midday, a dry wind drives ash in through the crack in the door, lifting a haze of fine dust. You shield your eyes by reflex, but still a tiny, hot scale lands right on the eyelid, burning sharp as a needle. You grab your water skin, tilt your head, hook the lid with a blackened nail, let the stream flush it out. The water clouds, the speck drops, a fleck no bigger than a fishbone, yet it leaves your eyes smarting. You laugh to yourself. Fire tax. A dab of vinegar on the lid. A blink. And back to the bellows. Keep the rhythm. That's the only way to stop other things from slipping through your hands. Past noon, the weighmaster drops by briefly, without scales. He glances at your coal pile, at the shackle on the anvil, then says very quietly, the sort of thing that never goes in the ledger. When they test strength, they like to strike at the weld, work the hammer deep into that edge. And don't harden the whole ring, too brittle. You grunt assent, feeling as though someone had set a perfect wedge under the anvil's foot. Steadier now. He leaves and the forge keeps a rare stillness. By afternoon you run your own test right there. Clamp the shackle on the anvil, pry gently at the weld with a small bar. The band doesn't crack, only sings a low note. The grain's still whole. You let out your breath, sweat stinging down to your eyes. Just then the church bell strikes a short peal. Guard shift change. You remember the unfinished crossbar, return to drill the bolt holes, bevel the edges to save the wood, grind the corners smooth to the hand. As the sun leans west, the steward returns with a strong-armed servant. Testing on sight. Just as the paper said. They set the shackle on a post. The servant slips in a bar. Twists. No fracture. They try the lock. Steward turns the right key. Bolt slides with a neat tack. Wrong key. No give. They set the crossbar in the mock frame. Holes true, bolt engages. The steward nods, counts out silver, then, as always, deducts last month's coal. The coins in your hand lose half their weight before they touch the cloth purse. He signs the leather slip. Received. Pausing, his eye catches the new guild-marked plaque on your wall. His voice is half praise, half warning. Don't make the guild read your name under find. The words drop into the forge like a small stone, neither sinking fully nor floating away. When they're gone, you sit on the threshold, drink a swallow, look at your hands. At the base of your right forefinger, a blister has ripened, white-rimmed, stinging like salt. You take a needle, tease out the grain of scale lodged there, rub in some lard, wrap it. These little habits are written nowhere, yet they keep you from wood hand days, when the hammer falls half a finger off. The next morning you mean to keep to small work, grinding a few, kitchen knives, forging a batch of roof nails, shoeing a grey mare you know well. But before early prayers, a guild runner comes, panting. Next week's the town fair, stage going up in the square. Guild orders all forges in the book to make long nails for the stands. Deadline 3 days. Stock from the guild. Guild mark, guild scale. Short on delivery, fine. He hands you a little board with the quantity, a long number. You look at the nail chest, do the math. Your 2 hands won't make it in time. Hire help and you must log the name, the hours, the share. But the guild allows borrowing the water hammer at the guild house for bulk nail work. You decide, tomorrow at first light, go to the guild, book hammer time, bring billet to stamp heads in batches, finish the shanks and points back home. The trade has taught you many things, one of them being to borrow strength when the job runs long. The rest of the day you prep billets, cutting bar into lengths 2 knuckles long, tie in hemp bundles, chalk on a scrap of wood, long nails, guild. While you work, the neighbour stops by with a rumour of a new town tax for wall repairs. You nod, hearing but not seeing any way to dodge. Here, the only thing you own is your hammer's pace. In the afternoon, a patrolman stops to borrow small tongs. His armour's chest strap loose. You pinch, bend, peen. He nods, lays 2 coins on the table, taps the anvil once, clean. Everyone seems to share the forge's private language. 1 tap is good, 2 is urgent, 3 is angry. You prefer the single tap. That evening you bank the fire deep in ash because the dry wind's back. Candlelight throws the plaque's shadow, hammer and anvil, across the floor like 2 old friends. You take your little ledger, write, shackles, 2, lock, 1, bar, 1, tested, deducted, done. Under that a reminder, long nails, gild, water hammer. Finished, you sit still, letting your ear catch the forge's smallest voices, wood contracting, cooling metal's faint breath, a single ash grain falling. Such sounds are the same wherever there's a church, a market, a guild, a manor. In this middle century, they are labour's background music. At first light, you shoulder the billet bundles, slip through the town gate while the guard still rubs his eyes. The guild house stands open. In the yard, the water wheel turns, lifting and dropping the hammer with the stream's beat. You place billets on the nailhead die, wait for the hammer's thud, heads spread neat. Your hands only turn, place, receive. The pattern is like a prayer learned by heart. 1 blow of water, 1 turn of hand, 1 set of eye. And you realise what you've always known, but never named. Even here, in the middle of 3 ages, with marks and laws woven tight, there are things that still heed you, hot metal and the hammer's rhythm, whether water-driven or hand-swung. Keep the rhythm, and they'll follow. By noon you carry home the stamped heads, light the forge, work the bellows, draw the shanks, point them. The chest fills. The clatter shifts from hollow to solid. Salt sweat runs to your lip. You breathe through your teeth, eyes blurred with heat, hands steady still. The trade's rhythm like the worn cobbles under the street. Walk in the groove, and you don't stumble. At day's end, you bundle the nails, press the guild mark on the tag, set them by the door. In the book you jot, long nails, first bundle. A short stroke of ink like a single hammerful, final, no flourish. Then you snuff the candle, slide the bolt. Outside, the church bell strikes again. Up the street, the watchmen change. On the wall, the plaque's shadow of hammer and anvil rests quiet. You lay your palm on the cooled anvil, smooth, cold, with a fresh grind mark, and whisper the thing you've told yourself since the start of this tale. Keep the rhythm. If, at that very moment, someone asked, "In this time, what do blacksmiths suffer from most?" you could answer without a thought. From burning heat, from iron dust, from aching shoulders, from the whip's sting, from the stamped paper, from the weighmaster's nod, from silver gone thin before it reaches the purse, and from the hardest thing to see, that the forge always stands under someone else's roof. But you'd add 1 more, said Lowe, so as not to wake the fire. Because tomorrow you still must rise early, work the bellows, read the heat, draw the grain, grind smooth. So every roof in the town stands through the night wind. And so, in the middle of 3 ages, you, a common smith, go on telling your story in metal, in the small things people touch every day, and in calluses written in no book at all. You bring the first bundles of long nails to the guild hall, while a thin layer of frost still clings to the shutters. The yard is still wet, the water wheel turning slow, the water hammer falling thump like a heartbeat not yet in a hurry to wake. The ledger man checks each bundle, seals them with lead, scribbles a few lines, then pushes them toward the corner meant for the stands in the main square. "On pace," he says, short. You nod, turn back to the forge to resume your part, drawing shanks, pointing tips, tying hemp cord. The work repeats, but in that repetition you feel steady. Each nailhead spreads right, each shank straight, each bundle thuds full. That's what speaks for you when the ledger tilts toward the scale. By noon a guild messenger comes. "Short meeting this afternoon, a word or 2 on nail prices for the festival." You wipe your hands on the apron, lock the latch, head down the street. The guild room is more crowded than usual. The smell of hands and hammer oil mixed, a rough cloth with the hammer and anvil mark hanging on the wall. The guildmaster speaks slow. Festival week. No one sells below this. He sets a lump of lead on the table, reads the number. Some sigh, some nod. A blacksmith from the North Quarter, face all bone, raises his hand. Whose bundle from yesterday was called light? A few eyes glance your way, then move on. The guildmaster taps the anvil's edge, his voice low. The guild weighed it. Full. Don't let rumour replace the scale. The words snuff out the small murmurs, like a ladle of water poured over coals just starting to flare. You return, open the forge, work the bellows. The fire rises slow, the heart of the forge warming. In the steady rhythm you remember something simple. Something the guild, the manor, the church will teach and forget. The craft's balance isn't only in the brass pans, it's also in the sounds the hands know. Full even, thick when nail bundles knock. The tack just right when a bolt slides home. The hiss on cue when straw yellow meets water. In the middle of the three ages, where rules are laid over repetition, sometimes keeping those sounds true is enough to pass the day without the whip. By late afternoon, the manor's steward stops by, bringing a scrap of leather scrawled short. Peg nails for the training yard's canopy, 200. Due, first light on market day. You don't ask why so fast. You know at the manor, any task for horsemen is urgent. You wedge the anvil's foot, draw the bellows deeper, set the billet. The hammer falls heavy, scale flies like rain. The skin between your fingers burns again. You change grip, grit teeth, keep the rhythm. By the last head, the old blister on your right hand ripens another layer. You pause a breath, dip the hand in vinegar, wrap the cloth, go on. The forge does not wait for small wounds to heal. It only accepts an unbroken pace. Night falls under the curfew on open fire. After evening prayers, you bank the forge's heart, cover it in ash like a blanket, and turn to work without flame, grinding on cold stone, oiling hammer handles, stitching the frayed strap of your leather apron. You sit on the threshold, hear the night watch pass, their torches cutting thin gold over the new signboard. The air is dry, the wooden walls give small cracks. You open the ledger, write, long nails, bundles 2, 3, peg nails, manor, in progress. Underneath a small line like speaking to yourself, keep the balance, keep the pace. At first light next morning you shoulder 2 bundles of peg nails to the manor storehouse. The brickyard is still damp with dew, servants raising the canopy frame, carpenters calling for nails like bakers for bread. You hand them over, they drive them in, the thud of wooden mallets so different from your iron hammer. The steward nods, deducts a portion for last term's coal, as always. You swallow dry. Coins thinned before they touch the purse are something you've learned to expect. He pauses, his eyes passing over the guild mark on the bundle, and says something caught between praise and reminder. With a name comes eyes. That follows you back to the forge, lying quiet in the chest like a stone slipped into your pocket. By midday the weighmaster stops again, not to weigh, but to bring a new wax notice from the town. Tomorrow evening the stands go up. The day after the festival, after evening prayers, anyone whose fire shows red light, fined. You nod. You've noticed that since the guild-marked signboard was hung, your forge door feels like a wall with eyes. People look harder, you sweep more. You bank ash deeper, you hang hammers in a straighter row. Not from fear, but because in these times keeping the outside neat is another way to keep the inside safe. In the late day the neighbour borrows your tongs. Barrel hoops loose, he says. You bend, peen, hand it back. He leaves 3 onions and a lump of fat on the table. You smile, keep them. Such trades rarely disappoint. Then a young apprentice from the carpenters comes, pointing to the leather wrap on your arm. Does it hurt? You answer plain. It hurts when remembered. When forgotten, it's only warm. He nods, not fully understanding, but less afraid of fire. These 2 short talks are like a mouthful of cool water midday. Not enough to fill, enough to swallow more dust. The night before the festival, the guild hall burns candles in the main room, hangs rough cloth, sets the anvil bright. You're called to bring a few pieces for show. A curled hinge that swings smooth, a lock whose bolt goes tack, a bundle of roof nails straight as a string. You lay them on the table, stand half a step back. The visitors aren't loud. They touch, tap, sometimes ask how to keep it from jamming. Don't temper too hard. How to keep it from rust. Thin grease, steady use. How to know a nail's full? Listen. You answer slow, low as the bellows draw. Not teaching, just reading aloud what your hands already know. An old man touches the anvil's rim, flinches at the cold. You understand. A cold anvil is a resting anvil, but your hands are still hot. In the middle of the three ages, ancient, medieval, modern, the likes of you are mentioned only through the objects you leave. On festival morning you rest the hammer a moment. Church bells ring long, guild members march, the familiar rules are read out. The fined names, the praised names, and the many who stay silent. Your name is nowhere. As before, you feel light. In the square, the stands are raised of new timber, your nails biting under every beam. You step up to test, foot on wood, hearing the dry, solid sound. Enough for your peace. A child runs by, stomps for fun, laughs, not knowing that underfoot is a grown man's hammer song. It doesn't need to know, just as a roof in a night wind doesn't ask the nail's name. At noon you return to the forge, light the fire again. On a rest day there is still urgent work. The town gate guard wants an old iron hoop bent back. A housewife needs her knife edged for cutting festival bread. You do it, no higher price. Festival days are for eating more, speaking less, and you don't want expensive clinging to the new signboard. By late afternoon, as the light turns straw yellow, the weighmaster stops again, this time with no scale. Just stands at the threshold. Stands nails. Good. Tomorrow bank the fire early. Wind's changing. You smile. I've been banking the heart since before you said so. He smiles too, thin as a coal mark on the forge lip. Night comes. You heap ash deep. Tie the bellows rope. Hang the hammer. Wipe the tongs. You sit on the step. Look at the hammer and anvil sign in the dusk. You think of what has passed through your hands this week. Locks, bolts, hoops, bars, long nails, peg nails, shoes, hinges. And what has passed through you? Fine slips, lead seals, guild notes, rumours, nods. All of it moves through you like water through a wooden trough. Where the planks fit tight, the water runs smooth. Where they gap, it spills. And fines follow. Your craft is replacing planks, tapping wedges, smoothing edges, so the trough lasts one more season. At dawn the next day, before the street grows loud enough to break your focus, 3 very light knocks tap the door. Knock, knock, knock. The guild master, alone. He stands by your signboard, looks at the carved seal, then says quietly, "Yesterday there was an anonymous complaint of light nails. I weighed them, full. Don't let rumour pull you out of pace." You bow your head, say only 2 words. "Yes, master." He nods, leaves. On the ground his footprints are faint, but in the forge his words stay like a stone wedged under the anvil, steadier now. You work the bellows, call the fire. Red swells up, the warm roar of breath. You set the billet, draw the grain, smooth the face. Outside, the Middle Ages remain that middle people read in books, standing between old and new, between church ledgers and town ledgers, between the anvil inside and the water hammer outside. But here in this forge, that middle is only a breath's rhythm. Work the bellows, read the heat, strike the head, draw the shank, grind smooth, bank the ash. You take each step in turn, as if walking an old cobbled street. Stay in the groove and you don't stumble. If someone asked right now, after all these marks, all these bundles of nails, what is still yours alone? You would lay a hand on the cooled anvil face. and say very softly so the fire won't think you're boasting. The rhythm. Then you breathe through your teeth, lift the hammer, and let the rhythm tell the rest of the story. The story of a blacksmith in the middle of 3 ages, working under someone else's roof, yet strong enough to keep every roof in the town steady through the night wind. That morning you open the door while dew still clings in beads to the iron loop of the latch. The damp air makes the wood creak softly, like a reminder, today don't hurry, just walk in the worn groove of the stone. You scoop up ash, search for the heart of the forge with the tip of the tongs. A red speck rises like a coal that knows how to breathe. 1 pull of the bellows, 2 pulls, wind slips through the tuyere, the fire shifting from deep dark to cherry red, then to orange red. You set the billet down, feeling the cold on the anvil's face retreat, replaced by a warmth that seeps through the leather apron, through the calluses as thick as fish scales in your palms. The morning's work is filling the gaps, adding another bundle of peg nails, bending a door ring, regrinding the pair of hinges for the grain store door at the market. In the steady sound of hammering, you hear the street waking, a cart rolling over cobbles, wooden wheels scraping the old grooves, a bread seller calling, the scent of malt from the beer shop at the alley mouth drifting by. The church bell strikes the hour, warm and solid like the water hammer in the guild yard. In the middle of the 3 ages Western books divide, your day's rhythm always closes into the rhythm of the bell. Begin, repeat, stop, bank the ash. By mid-morning the weighman arrives. He stands at the threshold, still holding his polished brass scale bag, nodding toward the chest of nails. You lift the lid, invite him to choose a few bundles at random. The scale tips, then steadies, the pendulum touching the mark lightly. Full, he says, his eyes glancing toward the corner of the forge where you hang the wooden tag carved with the guild mark. Then he lowers his voice, the tone reserved for things not written in the ledger. This afternoon the stands go up. Procession tonight. Guild wants all forges banked early. Winds turning west. Thatched roofs catch easy. You nod. Such reminders are wedges under the anvil's foot. Small, but they keep the whole day from rocking. You move on to the softer work, accumulating the little pieces that come every day. A kitchen knife with a loose handle. You pull the old pin, replace it with a rivet. Drop a bead of beef tallow in the gap. Quick hone on the stone. The scrape even as a psalm. A wagon axle collar chipped. You heat it, work the grain toward the break, dust it with fine ground sand. Then hammer so the soft weld takes. Rest 1 breath in the air before touching water. A horseshoe needing its angle changed. You place the template over it, tilt the nail holes so when the nail's head is hooked, it hugs the hoof. Everything is small pieces, fit enough together, and you pass the day without your name read in the find column. At noon you let the fire rest for half an hour to save coal. Sunlight pours through the thatch gap in a thin hand, creeping slowly across the dirt floor, like the hour hand of a clock you don't own. You lean against the wall, lift your cup, tasting the faint tang of vinegar, a habit left from rinsing blisters. Looking down at your hands, you read your own chronicle. A white streak across the thumb from a tongue slip 2 years ago, a brown patch at the wrist, where scale bit deep and callus gathered. A black dot near the nail, a speck of scale trapped under skin, to be picked out tonight. The history of the trade lies here, not in any leather-bound ledger. A history written in salt sweat and iron dust. Mid-afternoon, the manners men bring a wooden frame to test quickly the latch bar and hinges you promised. They set it down, knock it, thock, thock, wood and iron together. The steward glances at your new signboard. Hammer and anvil cut deep with the guild mark, then count silver. Same as always, count, subtract, record. You take the remainder feeling the cloth purse lighter before it even touches your hand. Nothing surprising in the day, and for a blacksmith in the middle of the 3 ages, that very lack of surprise is a kind of grace. You bank the fire a little earlier than usual. The heart of the forge, buried deep, ash piled thick, the tuyere mouth stuffed with rawhide to stop stray sparks. The rest of the evening's work needs no flame. Oiling hammerheads, stitching the apron strap, honing with the cold stone, updating the ledger. You stack hammers from heavy to light, from flat face to round, tongs hung from wide mouth to narrow, one old wolf-mouthed tong set apart for tomorrow's thick billets. The end of day tidying is the invisible cord tying today to tomorrow. You do it like prayer, not hurried, not skipped. From the square comes the sound of drum beats. They're raising the stands, fixing crossbeams, testing their strength. Children laugh, carpenters shout jokes. Someone reads aloud the list of guilds for the festival. Your name, as always, is not read. You understand. In these times, only the top and the find are read. Most of us live in the silence between those two columns. You like that silence. It lets you keep your rhythm. Festival morning, you light the forge later by a fraction, only to call it warm without letting the fire flare. In the square, coarse cloth flags hang from balconies. Plain painted wooden shields leaned against walls. The Metalworkers Guild marches carrying a few sample pieces, hammers, a small anvil, a lock, curled hinges. The guildmaster taps the anvil set in the centre, reads the rules. No forging on Sundays except for fire rescue. Keep the price, keep the weight. No hollow core billets, no hiding coal debts. A smith from the South Quarter is named in the fines for selling light nails. The weighman lifts his bag, silent, nodding, as if to confirm weighed. The crowd murmurs just enough, then falls quiet. You look down at your hand, tightening the strap around your right wrist. Not from fear, but because you remember that a full chest of nails is your best armour. At midday, the procession passes your forge door. Even singing, slow drumbeat, flags swaying. The crowd spills in. A housewife asks for an urgent sharpening to cut bread. You explain gently that today the forge rests, but a cold stone can still hone, and you hone it, charging nothing. A gate guard brings a bent latch ring. You straighten it with tongs and a cold hammer, telling him, "Come tomorrow for a new pin." A boy stands watching a long while, asks, "Does the hammer get tired?" You smile. The hammer doesn't tire. The hand does. He nods, seeming to understand halfway. Toward evening, the dry west wind returns. You heap another layer of ash, test the bellows cord, hear the hiss of wind vanish. The weighman stops by again. No scale, only glancing into the forge as if to ask, "All right?" You point to the thick ash. He says, Then he tells in a low voice, "This morning the South Quarter forge was shamed half the day. Nails under guild weight." Smith said, "Billet was hollow, but the ledger doesn't hear the word because." You stay silent. You know that kind of phrasing. In this age, short verbs decide a man's fate. Forge, deliver, receive, fine. All you can choose is the evenness of your rhythm before the last word arrives. At night, you sit on the threshold, watching the hammer and anvil shadows fall on the floor. The church bell hums long. The watch changes shifts. You open your small ledger, write 3 lines. Peg nails, delivered. Hinges, honed. Fire, banked. Under that you add 1 sentence, as if speaking to yourself. Middle, keep rhythm, keep balance. You don't add philosophy. Too many words tire the mind like too many hammer blows tire the hand. At first light the next morning, with the festival over, work floods in like water through a newly opened sluice. A carpenter brings a bundle of chisels to be retempered. You line them by size, read the straw colour, quench half body, so the edge is hard but the shank still tough. A farmer needs the spine of his ploughshare rebuilt. You work the grain toward the spine, grind the edge so it bites the soil. A carter asks you to bend a barrel hoop. You forge it round, drill even holes, bevel the edge so it doesn't scrape the wood. A group of watchmen want armour straps reset. You use the pritchel hole in the anvil to punch clean round holes, rivet, curl the edge. All day the hammer falls in a rhythm your hand knows. Shoulders ache, wrist throbs, but the rhythm carries you through. In the midst of that evenness, something small happens. Small, but it lingers in your mind. An old man brings in a worn door hook, the eye loose, the edge corroded. He lays down 2 very worn coins and a small bag of beef tallow. "I need it to last 1 more winter," he says. You look at the hook, at his trembling hands. The repairs cost in the ledger is nothing. But for him, perhaps it is much. You fix the hook, hammering the edge round again, tightening the eye, greasing it. When you hand it back, you push the bag of tallow toward him. "I still have some." He looks surprised, then smiles, a shy smile like a man stepping into a stranger's house. The hook will bear no name, but on his door it will swing smooth through the cold wind. That is your profit for the day, written in a way that needs no lead seal. By day's end, the guild sends word. Next month, check all hammers and anvils on record. They want to be sure the anvil's face is flat, edges not too chipped, hammer handles uncracked. You understand. Good tools keep the guild's name, and truthfully, they keep your wrist whole. You take the grindstone to the anvil face. The edge you dressed last week now only shows a faint scar. You re-wedge the anvil's foot, hearing it stand firmer when the hammer strikes. You oil the heavy hammer's handle, feeling the wood drink until it shines smooth as rawhide. No one pays for these jobs, but they repay you with a night's sleep less full of ringing in your ears. Night falls, and you pick a few specks of scale from your skin, falling stars of the trade. Each drops on the floor with a faint tick. You rub in tallow, wrap the bandage. The blister ripens another ring, to peel away and leave a thicker skin. The body learns the craft by clothing itself, year by year, month by month. Those layers make you into someone a hammer can lean on. You lie back, eyes half closed, hearing the forge breathe in the ash. If someone sat beside you and asked, "Living in the middle, medieval, what's the hardest part?" you wouldn't speak long. You would answer with the things you've done all day. Because of the heat, the iron dust, the aching shoulders, the burning wrists. Because of the guild ledger, the weighman's bag, the lead seals. Because the silver thins before it reaches the purse. Because a rumour can pull you out of rhythm. And because one nod from the weighman can let you sleep easy. But you would also add, very softly, as if speaking to the forge's heart, that one thing is still yours. The rhythm of the bellows, of reading heat, of working the grain, of grinding smooth, of banking the ash. That rhythm walks with you through every day, putting your name into the small things people use without remembering who made them. Tomorrow morning, you will rise earlier by a fraction, scoop ash to find the red speck, pump the bellows to wake the fire, set the billet on the anvil, hear the nail head spread with a thock, and the lock's bolts click just right. Out there, people will still divide history into 3 parts: ancient, medieval, modern, naming kings, campaigns, treaties. But here, in the small forge under the thatched roof, your history is a chest of full nails, a signboard still hanging, and a forge not sealed shut. You pull the ash blanket over the vermitamt, heart, smiling to yourself. In the middle, sometimes sleeping peacefully is a victory, and you, the nameless blacksmith, have forged that victory from hammer blows no one records, but everyone hears in a door closing smooth, a roof standing firm, a road where a horse's hoofbeats never stumble. You had only pumped the bellows twice when it suddenly exhaled a long sigh, sounding like an old man worn out, then collapsed entirely. The mouth of the air pipe coughed faintly, and the fire in the forge sagged into a thin red line like a thread. You bent down to look. The old hemp-stitch seam on the edge of the bellows leather had split lengthwise, revealing fibres silvered with mould from damp. A bellows tearing in the early morning. That's the sort of surprise that makes the whole day tilt like an anvil set on a crooked wedge. You stood still for a beat, letting your heartbeat slow to match the first hour bell. Then you pulled out the repair box, a big needle, a punch for holes, a few small rivets, a strip of rawhide that had been soaking in salt water since last week. You lit a candle, heated a pot of hide glue on the small charcoal stove. A glue with a faint rancid smell, supple when hot, sticking like a guild promise when cold. You unfastened the bellows straps, punched neat holes, threaded in the strip of rawhide as a reinforcement face, sprinkled horn dust on for grip, brushed on a thin coat of glue, pressed the two edges together, hammered in the rivets in a staggered line. Each hammer strike was a small plea. Don't pop, don't burst. When you tested the pull, the bellows gave a low ooth, the breath returned, and the fire climbed a tone. You stopped, letting the glue fully cool. There are some things in this craft that are heard, not seen. The right ooth means the morning has been returned to you. You hadn't even wiped your hands when the church's record keeper arrived, cloak speckled with dew, holding a thick ledger. Time for the tithe to the granary, he said. List the forged items for the grain store. Replace door hooks, fix hinges, padlock rings with leather. Record and apportion. His eyes roamed your forge like a man at home. Flat anvil, hammers hung in a straight line, a full chest of nails giving off the sound of fullness. He touched a fingertip to the anvil's face, then pulled it back, though it was still cold. In the middle, he muttered, as if to himself. There's the church, the ledger, the share taken. Do it right, and you'll be at peace. You nodded. You'd heard that line 100 times, but it still worked like a paperweight on a thin sheet. You stoked the fire again. Cherry red swelled up, then turned orange red. The morning's planned work. Finish the hinge nails for the grain store. Forge 2-door latches. Sharpen a serrated scythe blade. Today the north wind slid into the alley like a cold knife. The bucket in the corner had formed a thin layer of ice. When you dipped your hands into vinegar, your skin shrank like wet paper near heat. You pulled the bucket closer to the forge, tossed in a pinch of salt. Salt water freezes slower. And when tempering steel, it gives a different hiss than plain water, thicker and warmer. You cut. The iron bar heated it red, set it on the square hole, struck the nail head thock evenly, drew the shank, tapered the point. Dropping into the chest, the click-clack sound shifted from hollow to solid, a tone that loosened your shoulders by half a finger's width. You moved on to the door latch. Square shank, thick head, a narrow grease groove. You filed the edges, rounded the corners, tested it on a mock wooden frame. Small jobs scattered through the day, like nails across a plank, keeping the boards tight so water doesn't seep through. By mid-morning, boots with hobnails sounded on the porch. Someone from the manor, no red wax this time, only handing over a small wooden plaque with carved words. Lord's grant upon the forge. Winter season fee for bellows, coal, air pipe. You knew that grant? Like mills and ovens of the Lord. A forge was also seen as something to be taxed when the season came. You counted out 4 coins, slid them over. The man set a stamped lead token on your bench. Light yet heavy. Take it when you go to market, he said, so the watch knows you've paid your share. Then left. You looked at the dull lead token, seeing in it a simple truth. Between the ancient and the modern, in what people call the Middle Ages, the seal always walks half a step ahead of the fire. You returned to the forge, just as the freshly mended bellows gave a smooth ooth. You pushed deeper. The fire answered without lag. You smiled to yourself. Some days a blacksmith's honour hangs on a tight leather seam and a firm wooden wedge. At noon the cartwright came back with a piece of news that was funny without being pleasant. The second wheel needs banding too. You nodded. The two of you repeated the old dance, heating the iron ring to orange red, lifting it with long tongs, setting it onto the wood rim, dousing with water. White steam rose like cloth hung in the porch, the smell of scorched wood and hot iron blending into the scent of the marketplace. The iron ring shrank to grip tight, giving a deep sound. You wiped your sweat. Your right wrist twinged. The hammer elbow stirred again. You switched to a softer task to cool the hand. A strap lock, bolt, shackle, keyhole, spring, a chain of small parts fitting together. While filing the lock's edge, there came a knock like someone at the wrong door. Knock, knock, knock. The scale keeper, empty-handed, stood in the doorway. "End of the week, the guild inspects anvils and hammers," he said. "Remember to grind chipped edges. Don't let the anvil face wave, the carpenters are complaining." You nodded. "And," he lowered his voice, the sort spoken on the porch, not inside the guild hall, "don't let water in your bucket form a film. I've seen forges quench steel through thin ice. The voice of the steel will turn brittle." You pointed at the pinch of salt in your bucket. He nodded, faintly, leaving a blink like a very light tap on the anvil's edge. "Good." By late afternoon, drizzle returned, sprinkling the thatch roof like dusting flour. The town gatekeeper stopped by, handing over an old lock ring with a broken hinge. "Festival season, more people coming and going," he said. "Don't let the door stick." You pulled the old pin, re-hammered the hole, shimmed with thin T-steel, oiled, beveled. When you returned it, he tapped the anvil once. Thock. The knock of someone less worried. Such knocks don't go in the ledger, but they ease part of the invisible whip on your back. At night, you banked the heart of the forge, deep, adding a thick layer of ash, wedging rawhide into the mouth of the air pipe. With the fire out, you tidied, dressing the anvil face smooth as an altar table, oiling hammer handles, adding stitches to the bellows seam, for dry leather shrinks and will gap if left. You opened your ledger, writing lines like a litany. Bellows, patched. Anvil, dressed. Nails, plus 36. Latch 2. Rifen 1. Lock 3. At the bottom you wrote small, "Winter, salt water, don't rush." The next morning frost lay thicker on the thatch. You touched the anvil, cold as stone buried deep, then set stock upon it, hearing cold metal shift to warm under hammer. Today you spent half the morning on the grain store. Door hooks, large hinges, crossbars. The rest went to the guild, delivering bundles of nails with the new wide heads. You cut, heated, struck, drew, filed. At quenching, the salt water hissed smooth, not sharp like raw well water. A fleck of scale shot onto your wrist, burning a small mark. You pressed it with the end of your leather apron, waited for the sting to fade, then lifted the hammer again. This craft teaches you that pain has a rhythm, and if you keep the rhythm, pain follows behind, not ahead. Mid-morning, a manor porter stopped by, sleeves wet with rain, asking you to retemper several chisels. You read the straw colour, quenched halfway, tempered back in air. You wanted the chisel tips hard, but the bodies still springy so they wouldn't snap when struck into wet wood. The porter stood watching, lips trembling with cold, eyes fixed on the fire. Fire warms faster than words. He took back the chisels, laying a few wet coins on the bench, plus a small pinch of salt. "For your salt water." You smiled. "I already have some, but salt is never wasted." At noon you passed the guild hall. The yard was wet, the water hammers falling slow like a sleeping heart. The master glanced over your bundle of nails, tapped the central anvil's edge in the hall, a sign of approved. The record keeper stamped the guild mark on your wooden token, the black ink smudging a corner before it dried because of the rain. You pocketed the token, stepped back half a pace. Here, half a pace back is often how you stay off the penalty list. By May afternoon, you were back at the forge, the north wind having shifted to bring the scent of wet earth and fresh straw. You finished the day's last batch, 2 heavy door rings, a medium lock, a crossbar. Hammer blows fell thock-thock, steady as raindrops on a roof. Outside, the watchman passed, hobnails tapping tuck-tuck on stone, mixing with the church bells for evening prayers. You banked the ash early, tied the bellows, tested the air pipe, hearing the hiss vanish, a sign you could sleep with the forge cold without dreaming of a red spark running up the thatch. That night you sat on the doorstep, picking the star rain, tiny scale flakes, out of your hands. Each one hit the damp ground with a tink sharper than usual. You rubbed salve onto a blister about to peel, pulled the cloth bandage a half-turn tighter. You opened the ledger, writing a line like a reminder, as if speaking to someone listening right here in the forge. In the middle of the three Western eras, between ancient and modern, the forge is under the roof of the seal, but the forge's voice still belongs to the hand. Then you closed the ledger, snuffed the candle, hearing the forge breathe under the ash. Before dawn, wind whistled, making the door seam tremble softly. You scooped the ash, touched the heart of the forge. The ember still lay there like a promise. You pumped the bellows, calling the fire awake. Today was the guild's inspection of anvils and hammers. You had ground the anvil edges, wedged the base, oiled the hammer handles. But you still took one more slow look. Hammers hung by weight, light to heavy, round face to flat. Tongs from wide jaw to narrow. Leather apron mended at the ripped edge with new hemp thread. Done, you stood still a beat, listening to the forge when doing nothing. The creak of wood, the drop of ash, the sigh of wind through a sealed air pipe. A very small song you've always wanted to memorise. They arrived right on the first hour bell. The scale keeper, the guild master, a young record keeper. They touched the anvil face, praised flat, flipped hammer handles, nodded not cracked, glanced at the bellows, the rawhide seam tight. Neat, the master said. Short. The record keeper dabbed pen to leather, wrote pass. No one mentioned the broken spear last week. That's how the guild gives you a quiet night. Not with praise, but with silence. You saw them off with a nod, then returned to the fire. Work followed work. Nails, latches, rings, locks. Now and then a scale fleck kissed your skin, burning a speck, then cooling. You breathed through your teeth, switched hands mid-beat, kept the hammer falling true. Early afternoon, the carpenter stopped by, offering a line that sounded like praise but was really a report. The grandstand still stands, despite last night's strong wind. You murmured assent. That was your signature. Dry, solid, unseen, but holding everyone up. At dusk, the scale keeper returned alone. He didn't come in, just stood on the porch, speaking through fine rain. Next month, the guild celebrates St. Eligius. Your forge has kept to the rules all quarter. If you wish, hang a small red ribbon on your sign. You looked at your hammer and anvil sign, thought of the scrap of red cloth stored since the day you got your own seal. You smiled quietly. You could hang it or not, so long as the sign wasn't taken down. You said, "I'll sew it firm." He nodded, tapped the anvil's edge lightly, then left. That night, before sleeping, you wrote a single line in the ledger. Bellows, steady. Anvil, flat. Rhythm, kept. Those 3 words for you were enough to close the day. If someone whispered now, of all the burdens on a blacksmith's shoulders in the Middle Ages, what's the heaviest? You would list the winter grant fee, the church's tithe ledger, the guild seal, the town's weighing bag, the north wind and the film on the bucket, the rumour that can run faster than the hammer. But then you'd rest your hand on the cooled anvil face, adding softly, so the fire wouldn't think you were boasting. The heaviest is keeping rhythm, and keeping rhythm is also how everything else gets lighter. You tucked the ash blanket over the heart of the forge, tied the bellows, hung the hammers. The church bell rang long. At the street's end, the watch changed shifts. In the forge, the wood creaked like a book closing. You smiled, letting sleep slide in like a spear, tempered at just the right moment. Not brittle, not soft, enduring. Tomorrow morning you'll rise again, scoop ash, pump the bellows, read colour, pack grain, file flat, bank ash. Short verbs linking you to the long history others will read in grand names. As for you, you only need to keep one very small sentence. Keep rhythm. In the middle of the 3 eras, sometimes that is enough. You thought today would be nothing but nails, door hooks, and a little knife sharpening. But the moment you slid the bolt open, a town crier had already thunked a wooden board onto the post of your porch. Starting this week, nails and pins sold must match the exact size of the market measure. Any forge selling short will be pilloried for half a day. Repeat offenders will have their nail chests confiscated. Below the writing hung a slender piece of wood, notched with marks, the market measure, dangling from a hemp string right in front of your door like an unblinking reminder. He gave the anvil a dry tap. This afternoon, the weighman will be making random checks. Then he left, carrying the smell of last night's rain still clinging to his jerkin. You looked at the market measure, looked at your nail chests, and understood. From now on, the full sound of the chest would no longer be enough. Correct would have to take shape. You hung the measure beside your hammer anvil sign, went back into the forge, dug through the ash to find the heart of the fire. The red ember was still there. 2 strokes of the bellows, and the flame woke. The first thing in your mind was to make a measuring board of your own. An oak plank drilled with holes carved with grooves, each hole exactly matching the shank size set by the guild, each groove matching the head spread dictated by the market measure. You sawed a small board, smoothed it, gauged it against the new rule, punched holes with a drift. You carved a crude but clear row of labels: roof, door, stand, barrel. This board would live right beside the anvil, within arm's reach. Every bundle leaving the forge would pass through it like a verse of scripture. You cut billets, heated them, set them over the square hole, struck thock to flare the head, drew out the shank, tipped it sharp. 1, 2, 10. Each one hitting the chest shifted the sound from hollow to solid. You paused, tested a bundle through the board. Head fit the stand hole exactly. Shank slid clean through the door slot. You nodded. Sweat salted your lip bitter. In the middle age of the 3 ages, people added laws like stones to a levee. You added a habit so the water wouldn't spill. Just as the fire was behaving, a dray cart loaded with ale barrels wobbled past your door, rear wheel creaking. Then, crack. The iron hoop loosened. The chock nail dropped free from the wet wood. The driver jumped down, pale. If the barrel bursts at the market gate, ale spills. Both you and I get fined for causing disorder. You disliked that both, but understood. Here, guilt likes to ride the shoulders of the one who can fix it. You tied it off, dragged the barrel into the porch shade, pulled the hoop, forged a longer chock nail to the barrel measure, beveled the tip to keep from tearing the staves, set it, hammered thunk-thunk until it hugged tight. The driver exhaled, laid 2 coins on your table, plus a scrap of beef tallow. You nodded. Those coins would soon become part of the charcoal purse. You went back to the forge. Next was a ploughshare billet from a farmer. The edge was hairline cracked, the spine fatigued. You heated it, drove the grain toward the spine, sprinkled on a pinch of ground sand, forge welded hot, let it breathe in the wind a moment, then ground the edge so it would bite earth. A flake of scale popped under your eyelid, hot and sharp as a needle. You tilted your head, rinsed, pulled the lid with a blackened fingernail. The scale dropped and clicked to the floor, the eye watering like it had wept itself lighter. You laughed to yourself. Fire tax, collected daily, not written in any ledger, no extensions given. Near noon the weighman appeared, carrying his weighing kit and another market measure. He didn't ask a word, just reached into the chest, grabbed a bundle at random, laid it across your new board, checked the grooves, tried the holes. Heads correct, shanks straight. He nodded faintly, then, without writing anything, set a piece of northern forest charcoal on the table. This batch burns clean. Expensive, but it keeps the talk of skimping on fuel down. You understood. Here, sometimes you pay extra coin to buy silence. You nodded, lifted the charcoal, light and snapping crisp like a promise you want to believe. After lunch, you worked the bellows deeper for a batch of door rings and crossbolts. While you were rounding the ring over the post, a stir rose in the square. A cooper was tied to the pillory past noon for thin hoops. The paper on his chest said so. The crowd wasn't loud, only glanced and moved on. A few children tossed crusts. You looked through the crack in your door, couldn't see his face under the hood. You turned back to the forge. Hands slowed half a beat. In the Middle Age, punishment didn't need to shout. It only needed to stand there long enough for tomorrow's smiths to grip their hammers tighter. In the afternoon, the manor steward arrived, this time not with red wax but a small cloth purse. Charcoal advance from last time, deducted here. He counted fast, the coins slipping through his fingers like water through a wooden trough. You took what was left, knowing it would grow thinner still at the salt shop. Before leaving, he tapped the market measure. Keep it right. Don't make me hear your name in the square. The words fell to the floor like a pebble. Not heavy, but enough to make you adjust your belt. While you were setting the grain in a bolt, the bellows sighed whoomp differently. The morning's patch had puckered from the leather drying. You cut the fire for a moment, warmed hide glue, spliced a strip of fresh hide along the seam, set 2 offset rivets, waited to cool. While waiting, you ran a whetstone along the anvil edge, changed the cloth wrap on your right wrist, hammer elbow stinging like salt. Short pauses like, these are the safety lines you tie to your day so you don't slip. At dusk, the town gate guard ran in, breathless. Portcullis jammed, chain rusted, bolt snapped. If it's not fixed, we close late, whole watch fined. You grabbed pliers, cold hammer, a handful of bolts to the door measure, followed him to the gate. At the stone arch, the iron chain lay in tarry pulleys, last night's rain swelling the rust like moss. You replaced the broken bolt, packed a thin shim into the worn hole, greased it, brushed the rust with sand and wire, tested the lift. The chain squeaked a trip, then ran smooth. The guard breathed like he'd just paid off a debt. He tapped an invisible anvil in the air, slipped a wet coin into your hand. You smiled. Small coin, but it saved you a night with your name on someone's lips. Back at the forge, you banked the fire earlier. Wind had shifted, and the curfew on open flame after evening prayers hadn't lifted. Without fire, you brought nails to the board, ran each bundle through, stamped the guild mark into its tag. Your ear heard full when bundle met bundle. Your eye read right when head fit hole, shank fit slot. You spotted one shank slightly bent. You pulled it, straightened it cold with a single decisive hammer tap. No negotiation. Here, right is sometimes only that. One hammer blow at the right moment. At night you sat on the threshold, picking star rain flecks from your hands, rubbing salve into the peeling blisters, wrapping the cloth half a turn more. The streets were damp. The coarse flags in the square hung lazy in the wind. The man pilloried earlier had been freed. The post stood bare, the ropes neatly coiled as if nothing had happened. You opened your small ledger and wrote, measuring board, made, nails, correct size, barrel, hoop, door, chain, deduction, done. Below you added a single small line, a reminder only you would hear. Don't let the measure get ahead of the ear. Next morning the rain had gone. You raked ash, called the fire. The bellows breathed even. Flame roared. The day's fill list was top-up stand nails to the new head width by half a fingernail. Forge 2 heavy door rings. Sharpen 3 scythes. A carpenter stopped by, brought chisels needing retempering. You read the straw colour? Quenched halfway. Let them breathe in the wind. A manor labourer brought an armour strap with loose rivets. You peened them back, bent the heads to hug, warned him, don't over-twist. Each task a small thing, but all of them nudging you half a step further from the pillory post. Midday, the guild clerk passed through, quickly checking anvil and hammer before next week's inspection. He touched the anvil face, nodded flat, looked at the bellows, tapped the seam, tight. His gaze went to your measuring board and he smiled thinly. Good, a board is better than an argument. You answered, ear first, board after. He grunted, left, jotting something in his ledger, a small line that might give you one night of peace. That afternoon, an odd order came from the church. several long hooks for candle lanterns in the chapel. "Don't let the flames touch the vault," the priest said. You forged hooks with curved heads, long shanks, beveled tangs, tested their strength with sandbags. Small things like these create soft light in a cold stone room. You like to think so, though no one asks what you think. You grease them thinly to keep rust away, pack them in straw. Before evening prayers, the weighman stopped by again, empty-handed this time. He stood at the porch, looked into the forge already banked with ash, and said almost under his breath, "Tomorrow they raise the tax tent. Your nails will move fast, don't let anyone borrow your guild mark." You nodded. Here, a name on a wooden tag could breed envy, and envy often took the shortest road to a fine. You slid the bolt tight, hung the hammer anvil sign straight. At night, before snuffing the candle, you set your hand on the anvil face, cold and smooth. If someone asked you right now, in the middle, medieval, between measure, scale, seal, and whip, which wears you down the most? You would answer softly but firmly, keeping rhythm. Because keeping rhythm is how you make the measure fit the hand, the scale fit the ear, the seal fit the board, and the whip pass right through the forge door without finding your name. You closed the ledger, pulled the ash blanket over the heart of the fire, tied the bellows, hung the hammer. The church bells struck the hour. Outside the watch changed shifts, and inside, the forge breathed gently, warm enough that tomorrow when you pull the bellows, the red will rise again like an old answer you need to hear every day. You open the door while the dew still clings to the iron bar of the latch, and see something already leaning against the porch post. A small strip of red ribbon tied to a wooden tag carved with the guild's mark. Beneath the tag lies a thin piece of leather, the handwriting of the master. Your forge kept the rules all quarter. If you wish, hang the ribbon on your signboard. No other words of praise. None needed. Something as light as cloth, yet pressing on your shoulder like a hand laid down. Not heavy, just enough to remind you, walk straight. You do not hang it right away. You bring the ribbon to the workbench, set it beside the small pointed knife and the jar of grease, then scoop through the ash to find the heart of the forge. The red ember breathes faintly under the grey layer. 2 pulls of the bellows, and the cherry red rises like a familiar greeting. This morning's plan is to do the filling work. A bundle of rafter nails with heads widened by half a fingernail, according to the new pattern, 2 heavy door rings, 1 crossbar, and sharpening 3 scythe blades. Filling work days are always quiet. No rush, no boasting. Just the right size, the right sound. In the steady beat of the hammer, you hear the street waking. A dray cart rattles over stone ruts, the wooden wheels scraping. A bread seller calls. The church bell strikes the first hours. The bellows wheeze evenly. Iron scale spatters ch-ch-ch, like grey star rain falling onto the leather apron. The new brown specks will harden into callus in a few days. You stop to test the nail bundle through the measuring board. Heads fit the rafter hole. Shafts slide clean through the door slot. You nod. The ear hears full. The eye reads right. Mid-morning, the town gatekeeper stops by. Iron-nailed boots wet with dew. He unwraps a bundle of cloth to reveal a heavy chain. There's a procession tonight. The arch gate must lift smoothly. You replaced the pin last time. Today I ask you to polish the chain links. You set the chain on the anvil, sprinkle sand, scrub with a wire brush, coat it with a thin layer of grease. When you return it, he taps the anvil's edge with a single thock, the tap of a man less worried. You answer with a curt nod. In this trade, words are seldom long. Once the chain is done, you return to the forge. Your right shoulder shifts, a small burn of reminder from the hammer elbow. You change your stance, let the hammer drop more from the wrist, tighten the bandage another half turn. While pressing the ring edge on the round stake, the weaver's boy peeks in, pointing at the red ribbon. Pretty. You smile. Pretty because it's clean, not because it's red. He doesn't fully understand, but nods as if half did. Then he runs off, his hem sweeping a bright streak of dust across the floor. By noon, a town crier posts a board on the market pole. This afternoon, the guild will read aloud the names of forges that kept the rules. The news drifts past your ears like misty rain. You slice bread, sip water, the taste of vinegar still at the tip of your tongue. Looking down at your hands, you read your own chronicle. The white line across the thumb from a slipped clamp 2 years ago. The black dot by the nail. A flake of iron the skin decided to keep. The thick callus at the hammer's root. Armour unique to the trade. Ledgers write other people's names. The body writes yours. In the afternoon, you tie the nail bundle, attach the guild-marked tag, close the forge door halfway, and head to the square. The platform is built from new beams, your nails driven under each plank. The guild hall hangs a coarse cloth with hammer and anvil carved deep. They read the rules as every season. No forging on Sundays except for fire rescue. Keep the weights, keep the prices. No hollowing the core of stock. No hiding charcoal debt. They read the names of forges fined. The crowd lets out a small "oh," then goes silent. They read the names of forges praised. When your forge's name comes, the master only taps the anvil set in the centre. One light thock instead of words. You bow your head. That sound is enough. On the way back, you stop at your forge door, take the red ribbon, sew 2 firm stitches into the corner of the hammer anvil sign. Not for others to see. For you, each morning, to find it in place like the bellows strap. What is tied in the right spot lasts. You call the fire once more. Finish the rings and the crossbar. When you grind the edges, the stone draws a sound as long as steady breathing. The carpenter drops by with chisels to be retempered. You read the straw colour, quench halfway. Revive in the wind so the tips are hard, the spine supple. The carter comes for his wedge rings, taps a short thock. A housewife asks for a knife sharpening, slices a cabbage stalk, says smooth. Those taps and smooths go unrecorded, yet they are the warm blanket that covers the forge each night. At dusk, the weighman stops by the porch. He brings no scale, just stands in the shadow, speaking like a breath. After the procession, there'll be a team testing the gates. Don't let the fire show red. You point to the 2-year, already sealed with rawhide. Nod. He notices the red ribbon on the hammer anvil sign. Squints a thin smile. Pretty because it's clean. You chuckle softly, bolt the door. Night falls. You bury the forge's heart deep in ash, tie the bellows, hang the hammers in order. Without fire, you do night's work. Dust the ledger, cut fresh lines where the measuring board's marks have faded, smooth the anvil face, oil the hammer handles, stitch more into the bellows patch. You pick out tiny star rain flakes from your skin. Each falls with a teach to the floor, like punctuation ending the day. You grease the blister about to peel, tighten the band another half turn. In the small ledger, you write briefly. Nails, done, rings done, bar done, sign stitched. Below, a small line like a private reminder. Hear the sound before hearing the book. The next morning, the procession passes before your forge. Coarse cloth flags sway. Voices sing evenly. Drums beat slow. You stand under the porch, hand on the cooled anvil, feeling the smooth chill spread through your fingertips. People pass, none looking inside for more than a beat. Good. Things that stand still should be forgotten. You step in, pump the bellows, call the fire awake. Cherry red appears, then orange red. You set the stock, the hammer falls in steady thock rhythm. There are no heroes here, no martyrs, only rhythm. And that is how the story closes as it should. Not with trumpets, not with whips, but with the short verbs you have repeated all through this middle time. Pull bellows, read colour, gather grain, revive, quench, grind, bury in ash. You have lived through enough of the things that make up what the Westerners call the Middle Ages, the red wax seals of the manor, the tithe ledgers of the church, the market rulers and town scales, the sound of the water hammer in the guild yard, the pillory where the paper simply says, "Late, fined," the rumours that run faster than a hammer blow, the times coin was deducted before it touched your hand. You have carried enough of the trade's wounds, eyes stung by scale, wrists raw from hammer elbow, lungs with a soft cough from smoke, callus plates thick as your own armour, and though the blacksmith shop has always stood under another man's roof, you have kept a very small roof for yourself, the roof of rhythm. You make no promises to the future. Tomorrow may still bring another paper, another fine mark, another cold tap on the anvil's edge. But in tonight's ash, the forge's heart still glows a spot the size of a fingertip. Enough that tomorrow, after 2 pulls of the bellows, the fire will flare again like an old answer you need every day. If someone asks, how hard was it for a blacksmith in the middle? You could answer with a long list. But if someone asks, how did you bear it? You would lay a hand on the anvil. Say very softly, so the fire won't think you're boasting. Keep the rhythm. You close the door. The church bell strikes the hour, as it does every night. At the street's end, the watch changes shifts, iron boots clicking tack-tack on stone. In the forge, wood settles with a faint crack. Ash falls almost silently. The red ribbon on the hammer anvil sign stays still, not to boast, but to remind. You lie down on the bamboo cot, pull the cloth over your chest. Your story ends here, where the fire sleeps and the hammer is silent. The rest, other mornings, other bundles of nails, other rings and hinges, will repeat themselves like a prayer. And if the listener is no longer awake to follow, that's fine. You have forged a far sitahomas, night's sleep. In the middle of the 3 ages, sometimes that is enough. And that is the history of the medieval blacksmith. Surely you've had a good night's sleep by now, haven't you? Come back tomorrow and tell me in the comments when this story helped you drift off. Thank you for listening.